Death arrived for Almas in a bizarre twist of fate entirely unlike any traditional tale of rebirth. Awakening in a strange world, Almas found no sign of the Sansu River or any peaceful garden. Gnawing hunger pushed Almas to consider chewing nearby leaves before deciding to hunt for real food. Clutched in his hands were a freshly wriggling fish and a genuinely terrifying giant insect. Convinced he was already dead, Almas figured he might as well fill his starving stomach at last. Swallowing a live creature horrified Almas, yet the lingering aftertaste proved even worse to bear. Stunned by the surreal turn of events, Almas recalled his fatal collision near the riverbank. Staring into the rippling water, Almas recoiled in terror at the completely unfamiliar face staring back. Confusion gripped Almas as he wondered if reincarnation had dragged his soul into a total stranger. Hoping it was just a vivid dream, Almas planned to wake up in a hospital bed from a minor fender bender. Dawn broke over the stream, forcing Almas to face the undeniable reality of his new body. Resourceful instincts kicked in as Almas gathered basic tools to carve out survival in the dense forest. Crashing through the brush, a griffin burst from its domain, unleashing a sharp warning cry. Spotting the beast's reflection, the terrified griffin mocked Almas with sneering arrogance. Disgust filled the griffin as it declared Almas too wretched a meal to bother hunting down. Frustration boiled over as Almas screamed at the alien sky, cursing last night's diet of insects and this cursed body. Swallowing his pride, Almas hastily apologized for trespassing across the griffin's sacred territory boundary. Ancient lore about human and griffin pacts spilled out, noting that even children knew the rules. Begging the griffin for mercy, Almas confessed his soul was displaced into a stranger's body, and the beast surprisingly understood his plight, offering blunt survival advice. The griffin agreed to aid Almas on one strict condition requiring his assistance. The griffin carried Almas deep into a vast cave swarming with bewildered griffin hatchlings. Questioned by hatchlings, the beast said they were abandoned human infants from the forest, leaving Almas to wonder if his origins traced to similar childhood starvation. Griffin tasked Almas with parenting the orphans, promising 3 years of food before they survived independently, dismissing insect jokes and insisting the duty fell to whoever saved them. Spotting leftover fruits scattered across the cave floor, Almas realized the beast brought them because it lacked any human parenting skills and desperately required his assistance. Accepting the burden entirely, Almas agreed to take charge of the helpless youngsters from that moment forward. Turning toward the crowd, he declared himself their new leader. Unfamiliar words met Almas because Griffin, an interdimensional traveler, could not decode their local tongue. Divine blessings bridged the communication gap between the beast and Almas. Borrowing divine power from Griffin felt straight out of a fantasy novel. Almas understood the foreign children's language and spoke it fluently. Ron stepped forward claiming leadership, but Almas laughed off the challenge and apologized for the boy's foolish ego. Homeless children surrounded Almas, wearing fake smiles that masked deep suffering. Vowing to protect them, Almas planned to start a farm despite his total lack of agricultural experience. 3 years of rations from Griffin meant 31 children, and Almas needed self-sufficiency fast, drawing immediate skepticism from Ron about farming difficulty. Clearing dense trees in the forest presented an exhausting obstacle. Small children lacked tool-handling strength, prompting Rose to advise Almas to abandon the farming plan altogether. Graham backed Almas, who scavenged discarded swords left behind by foolish warriors whose weapons littered Tetra and annoyed Griffin. Ron suggested trading the massive pile of weapons for food. Almas ignored him, instead asking about local geography. Tetra sat within the Romelia forest, bordered by the impoverished kingdom of Rosa to the east, Gilbed to the northwest, Domerga to the northeast, and Faldarm to the north where Gilbed attacked Faldam. Almas realized trading weapons for farm tools sparked a plan, reinforced when Griffin mentioned villagers fleeing a fake curse 30 years ago. Flying above the canopy, Griffin showed Almas an abandoned clearing far easier to farm than virgin forest. Almas discovered that the village possessed clean water and required only minimal structural repairs. Prime farmland lay open before them, offering an ideal plot of land dedicated to cultivating rice. Almas thanked Griffin for finding this site. Ron questioned the crop rotation plan's complexity and soil impact. Rosewood furrowed his brow at the livestock division plan, but Almas assured him yields would ultimately ultimately rise and set their first task as heading to Ruru's land. Ruru pointed to an empty tract, noting goats survived easily on tree bark despite lacking a hardworking nature. Griffin explained goat milk's high nutritional value, though Almas and Ruru loudly doubted trading livestock during a famine in the Kingdom of Rosa. Griffin agreed without hesitation, spreading his wings to travel far away and bring back goats for Almas. Almas guided the children in archery practice for future hunting, yet they teased him endlessly. Almas ordered the noisy children to focus on training until others successfully passed the rigorous challenge. Graham stepped up next to teach peaceful living before Rosewood's distressed cry pierced the quiet village. Racing to help, Almas found Rose captured by Rosewood, whose voice demanded food and rejected parental abandonment. Grinning evilly, the intruder called Rosewood foolish and exposed his true motive regarding their steel swords. Realizing the man's intentions, Almas assessed the threat with calculated precision before moving into action. Sprinting forward upon arrival at the scene, Almas lunged immediately to rescue the cornered Rosewood. Almas shouted for the child to escape first, standing his ground to block the dangerous aggressor. Holding a large branch, the man taunted Almas for buying time for Rosewood to escape, prompting Almas to ask his true purpose. The intruder jingled his gear, confessing he came to steal steel swords and trade them for scarce food. Almas struck decisively without hesitation, leaving the robber with zero guarantees regarding his belongings. A heavy mix of satisfaction and dread washed over Almas as he reluctantly took the attacker's life. Gathering quickly around Almas, the concerned children voiced their anxious questions to check if he was safe. Almas assured them he was completely fine, apologizing sincerely for causing any worry. Rose wept openly, terrified for Almas, who offered gentle comfort despite his own unease. Griffin arrived unbothered, dismissing the clash as common interspecies violence like stepping on ants. Griffin brushed off human nature, reminding Almas that their core mission was protecting the children. Weeks later, Almas headed toward the capital in the Kingdom of Rosa, taking in the bustling streets. Yuria smiled at the vibrant crowds, marveling at a lively capital she rarely got to see. Ron eagerly pointed out a clothing store, urging Almas to step inside and take a look around. Almas needed currency, exchanging beast fangs for cash before buying some herbs at the market. A nearby girl hurried over, asking if the item in question was actually caramel grass. She begged Almas to sell her the potion, trying hard to convince him it was not a fake. Following a smooth price negotiation, Almas handed it over for free and asked about its use. Yuria explained it created a smooth addiction when mixed, prompting Almas to ask about her origins. Yuria's vague village origins led to a monthly trade agreement for caramel grass before she departed, while Tetra, Griffin, and Ruru watched. Almas taught arithmetic, so Tetra and the other children could avoid deceit from dishonest traders and build futures. Petra complained of unfair treatment, prompting Almas to teach advanced Arabic calculation as a special reward. Keeping his monthly promise, Almas drank the herbal medicine and headed to the city to meet Yuria. Almas sought answers about protection during the journey, asking Yuria to explain what she knew. Yuria used fairy-blessed sight to spot hidden protections, confirming fairies were fundamentally kind. The king's blessing empowered Almas further, growing stronger the more people viewed him as a leader. Almas realized the children needed to accept his leadership, hoping to ask Yuria for guidance. Living near the Griffin Forest in Romalia, she inquired if she feared lice, prompting Griffin to ask how he knew of them. Yuria spotted travelers with his eyes of heaven, asked Almas how he avoided Griffin's curse, learning none existed yet, promised secrecy, then learned Yuria brewed potions via witchcraft. Sure, the whole country was cursed. Yuria vowed to end it, and blessed Almas's trip to Romalia once his father agreed. Herb sales covered essentials, and Almas planned painted jars for the nobles. Researching further, Almas discovered a closed kiln in a hot room could be easily improved by restricting oxygen through the chimney. Limiting oxygen allowed Yuria Carisha to produce black pottery jars superior to any outdoor creations, ensuring his pottery would excel. Almas announced a pottery goal, and with Griffin's protection easing winter to New Year, Griffin brought 10 forest children, prompting Almas to ask Tetra about King Rosati and Rosa's kingdom taxes. Soyeon confirmed Kingdom of Rosa excelled, but internal conflict erupted when House Ash was betrayed by separatist subordinates, causing heavy losses losses and forcing high compensatory taxes. Tetra wept upon hearing this, whispering that she knew her parents loved her deeply, though Almas usually comforted crying children. Seeing Tetra cry for the first time made Almas consider her future and the new arrivals after she fell asleep. Almas told children to act normal before Tetra woke, delivered herbs to Yuria in town, and asked to meet her father, learning the king would gladly welcome his daughter's friend. Surrounding Ramalia Forest, 4 nations left Rosas unstable, making strong protection essential, unable to rely solely on Griffin. Yuria's father offered safeguards despite tax troubles. Traversing the path to the Almas Palace, Yuria wiped his sweat and asked if he was joking. Meeting the king, Almas learned with trembling shock that Yuria's father ruled Kingdom of Rosa. Bowing before the king, she felt deeply honored to stand there as his daughter's friend. Studying magic constantly left the king with no friends, making this his first time bringing Almas home. Acknowledging Almas as Yuria's close friend, the king promised full assistance and responsibility for the forest children, though Almas sought no special protection. Bowing his head, the king thanked Almas for caring about future generations, leaving Almas stunned that a monarch submitted to him. Declaring Almas an honored citizen, the king vowed to protect the people and their belongings, then presented 3 requests to secure children's foundations, starting with a village visit. The second request asked Almas to maintain his friendship with Yuria, and the final one asked him to teach mathematics to the princess. Almas noticed a recent change in Tetra's attitude. Quiet tension stirs among the children as Tetra tends to the simple garden, sensing that something is fundamentally wrong. Almas steps close, urging her to speak her pain and promising strict secrecy, observing her obvious distress. Revealing her identity as Tetra Ash, she shocks Almas, who connects her lineage to the brutal Ash family clan cleansing. Softly whispering her gratitude, Tetra begins to process the weight of her hidden past, finally coming to light. Grief breaks through as she admits her parents are gone, though she refuses closure and curses Robert Fermi. Betrayal stings deep because Robert Fermi traded his humble origins for noble power after her father raised him. Almas offers violent retribution against Robert Fermi on Tetra's behalf, torn between his urge to tear him into 100 pieces and protecting his friends here. Tears fall as Almas promises that nobody will abandon Tetra, echoing the comforting words his own parents left behind. Bracing her spirits, Almas reminds Tetra of her sharp intellect and his absolute vow to shield everyone in this village. A bright smile returns to Tetra as she pledges to protect everyone alongside Almas, who warns her against reckless vengeance. Blushing deeply, Tetra admits she missed his prior words, her anxiety melting away as their mutual trust solidifies completely. Months slip by. Tetra masters writing completely. Then a harsh new tax reality strikes. Griffin's support ends, and Almas visits the king, who shockingly asks if Almas hates Yuria and wants to quit teaching her. Declaring there is no fixed term, the king insists Almas must keep teaching because no one else can reach Yuria. Almas questions Yuria's isolation, learning she wields rare millennium dark arts that terrify nobles despite her pure heart. Reassuring Almas, the king states her immense magical talent as a high priestess is common knowledge across the kingdom. Marriage to Yuria grants the throne and attracts ambitious vultures, prompting Almas to wonder why her royal identity was never concealed. Security prevents hiding her royal status, yet the king notes Yuria braved her shyness for herbs, prompting an idea. Almas proposes bringing Yuria to visit his village, making the king pause to weigh if the shy princess can travel there. Stepping into a new world, Yuria arrives at Almas village as the first official guest from beyond the palace walls. Having previously met Ron and Rosewood, she now engages the rest as Soyeon darts over to question Yuria and Almas about their bond. Yuria playfully claims she serves as his girlfriend. Hearing this, Tetra secretly jabs Almas, prompting him to offer endless apologies. Bolton chuckles that her fame has grown too dangerous, yet Almas trusts him implicitly. Almas counters by asking if Bolton protects the king's sole daughter thanks to his unmatched skills, though Bolton humbly calls himself a mere drunkard. Almas suspects hidden depths, knowing Tetra's royal ties as Princess Legos's daughter would prompt King Rosati to summon her personally if discovered. Almas wants Tetra to find happiness back in the Kingdom of Roses, but she refuses to entangle herself in messy politics. Whispering to himself, Almas worries Bolton might recognize Tetra from a decade ago, but realizes the drunk guard himself is the immediate hazard right now. Observing the children chat endlessly, he asks Almas what games he intends for them to play. After pausing to think, Almas suggests Yuria instruct the village in dark magic, drawing a scoffing laugh from Bolton about poison lovers playing normally. Almas secretly aims to foster village independence through mathematics rather than black magic, though teaching girls dark arts remains vital in this realm. Men may be unsuited for it, but curse defense helps Yuria bond with Bolton's children. Standing nearby, Bolton insists Almas drop the formal guard talk and treat him as a regular person, learning that Kingdom of Rosa promotes purely by skill. Confident Almas will eventually join the government for land grants. Bolton notes the unstable nation desperately needs outside help and awaits the king's move. Almas eyes a government role only after village self-sufficiency, but the king soon summons him to evaluate his untested harvester farming report. Bolton arrives as Almas showcases devices from his homeland, claiming the harvester works beyond standard 4-year crop cycles without revealing his origins. The king asks if the nation can adopt it, but Almas notes harvesters require massive land and landowner support, clashing with wealthy family politics. Shifting gears, the king promises Almas a royal reward for the harvester design. Almas asks for a farming horse, securing 2 free mounts and a year of feed before the king summons his brother to debate national politics. Almas bluntly exposes the political structure as a loose system riddled with blood relation and territorial loopholes. Power leaked down through generations, leaving royal authority thin and fragile at the base. King Rosati found his military scattered among powerful houses, so Almas proposed building a centralized government to survive war, stunning Raymond with such mature political insight. Seeking Almas for guidance on this urgent reform, Raymond learned the realm needed trusted figures like the Rosish family framed as divine guardians before discovering the king's failing health. Almas confronted the king directly about his remaining time, but the ruler hid his diagnosis to force tactical growth. Treating this trial as mental conditioning, Almas returned to the village leading 2 horses, which Soyeon spotted and loudly announced to the awaiting crowd. Ron grinned at the gentle beasts as Rhea, introduced by Almas as her animal-skilled servant thanks to King Rosati, sat atop one and requested warm village hospitality. Crashing through the tree line with a massive captured wild boar, Graham announced his successful hunt to everyone. Ron stared at young Graham, hauling the heavy beast, while Almas marveled at his muscle growth fueled by rigorous archery training, leaving surrounding villagers astounded, pleased to watch the children mature. Almas wrapped up the conversation and led the 2 newborn horses straight back to the fields for triple the workload. Soyeon questioned his unusual farming preparations, and Almas explained that cultivating the specialized herb was meant for crafting powerful remedies to soothe severe pain. Nutritious hemp seeds sprouted fast after sowing, offering a rapid harvest cycle for sustainable crop rotation and durable raw fiber. Almas warned that they would use the hemp strictly for fiber rather than clothing, preparing for an economic crisis once Griffin cut off village subsidies and taxes surged. Almas raced to craft durable parchment replacing fragile wrapping and wood, then presented the superior paper to King Rosati, who praised its quality. Eager to introduce the village's latest breakthrough, Almas offered the paper to King Rosati, who instantly agreed to purchase the innovative material, proposing a 3-year exclusive supply contract. King Rosati joked about sharing secrets before promising to promote the paper nationwide if Almas maintained top quality. Almas agreed to the strict royal condition prohibiting him from exporting the paper to foreign kingdoms, securing the kingdom against information leaks. A full year flashed by in an instant. Griffin's cutoff marked a sad milestone, though Almas wondered if his path would have changed without their meeting, earning Griffin's praise for leading the village through 0 casualties. Parting ways, Griffin instructed Almas to visit more frequently, bringing liquor as thanks. Almas gathered Rosis and Rose Ice villagers to announce abundant crops stops, freeing everyone to seek families, but he's silently panicked over losing his workforce. Family bonds outweigh agreements, and Griffin's pact ending means these children can finally return home where they belong. Rosewood rebukes Almus for his foolishness, though Almus remains confused because Griffin's withdrawn protection caused Rose to misunderstand. Rosewood insists abandoning children is unacceptable, prompting Ruru to note extra food supply. Meanwhile, Soyeon fears potential resale into slavery, refusing to return. The children declare their love for Almus on this bright day before Almus oversees Tetra practicing magic and listens to Ruru curse quietly. Tetra creates food supplements that Almus feeds to goats. Meanwhile, an annoyed Ruru complains that magic requires time, money, and energy to yield any results. A child in animal fur hides body odor using new skills, and another leaps across roofs to completely conceal their presence. Bursting from the bushes to show affection, she giggles that Ruru never taught this, asking Almus to stop complaining since early training feels wild. Almus remembers her own soul transfer technique. Ruru laughs aloud, clarifying that the method is ordinary voodoo magic. Imagining an owl flying high, Almus pictures Soyeon with a twisted neck from a tragic magic accident, earning angry scolding from Ruru outside. Sitting quietly in the corner, Almus offers a gentle comment suggesting that voodoo magic is surprisingly soft and manageable. Eager to avoid teasing, Ruru asks Almus about fire magic, noting that her village already has fire, so wasting magical energy feels unnecessary. Over the span of a year, the settlement expands significantly and now houses 70 refugees fleeing from King Fermi. Driven out by crushing taxes, these villagers were discovered unconscious in the deep forest by scouts and brought back to safety. Tetra tells Almus that 6 newcomers bond with Ron, utilizing their farming skills to expand fields and harvest crops beyond all expectations. Raising a cup of forest wine, Almus drinks a toast in honor of Griffin's visit to the thriving settlement. Savoring the vintage, Griffin declares the delicious wine clear proof of the village's remarkable progress and stability. Expressing deep joy over their newfound independence, Griffin notes this self-reliance beats letting children starve to death. Warning Almus of potential disasters or invasions, Griffin promises assistance if needed, though the final choice rests entirely with Almus. Expressing gratitude, Almus hopes disaster never strikes, but Griffin urges him to avoid trouble by steering clear of the deep forest. Welcoming numerous refugees fleeing oppression under King Fermi, Almus watches his growing village embrace a safer future. Curses plague the kingdom constantly, dragging down harvests and sparking endless cycles of famine. Punishing unpaid taxes with instant execution drives desperate citizens to plan a perilous border crossing toward Rosis. Whispers soon spread of a hidden forest village guarded by a griffin where orphans thrive. Desperate refugees beg Almus for any work available. Another figure approaches Ruru. Grabbing Ruru by the hand, the stranger startles her into a shrill scream of protest against the physical contact. Abandoned long ago, Ruru faces a mother attempting a clumsy return, though biological refusal hits first. Other children protest, fearing fallout with Soyeon, but Tetra distrusts these newcomers, suspecting a corporate trap and advising caution per Almus, following Ron's orders to monitor them in his absence. Tetra prepares to investigate the company kingdom herself with general agreement. Almus tells Rhea she needs a horse for the trip alongside Tetra, shocking her since she cannot ride. Almus introduces foot pedals attached to the horse's flanks, assuring Rhea she can ride safely without gear. Remembering his past world before foot stirrups made night training universal, Almus knows unanchored riding is hard, but stirrups make learning easy. Almus hid this invention to dodge military entanglements, though Tetra notes King Fermi remains a beloved ruler. Public affection hides deep resentment stemming from the king's strained past with his own family before changing. They arrive swiftly at a border village they mistake for an outpost of loyal royal soldiers. Villagers explain that youths trained to hunt down tax refugees who fled Almus and the merchant forces under cover of night. Almus offers to ease communications by asking if their mission is dragging the escapees back home. Fresh tracks suggest the runaways slipped into the forbidden forest, seeking sanctuary in Griffin's legendary paradise. Royal wizards and hunting hounds make tracking easy, though Almus questions if entering the Griffin's forest risks angering the beast. The soldiers soldiers confess the king demands the hunt regardless, caring nothing for sacred beasts and sparing no escapee. Dragged back by the relentless army, those unfortunate souls return only as lifeless corpses. Almas and Tetra secured crucial information before returning to the village to map out their next strategy. Warning the other children, Almas explained that surrendering those specific people meant certain execution. Almas rallied 70 villagers, pointing out that 30 newcomers brought their total fighting strength to 100, enough to deter an assault from Kingdom of Firm. Realizing survival required absolute unity, the entire gathering shifted their stance and pledged support. Cries against the cruelty of betrayal echoed, yet Almas knew staying hidden from King Fermi remained impossible anyway. Concluding the strategy session, Almas drew everyone's attention and promised to safeguard their wish to remain here. Cheers erupted before Almas raised a hand for silence, reminding them that individual discipline would dictate their fate. Panic gripped Ron as he burst in with news of the advancing royal army, because Tetra's magic confirmed their relentless pursuit. Tetra rushed to warn the newcomers that the approaching military forces intended to capture and execute every last one of them. Despair swept through the villagers after fleeing so far, until Earl stepped forward from the crowd to demand calm. Bowing before Almas, Earl apologized for bringing danger to the settlement, though Almas recognized King Fermi would never overlook them now. Meeting Almas's hope, Earl swore to help defend the village, offering his modest experience in trade and negotiation as an asset. Almas offered a reassuring grin, gesturing for Earl to follow as they retreated to a quiet spot to finalize defense tactics, declaring this village their home. Almas listened as Earl poured out every tactical detail he possessed against Kingdom of Ferm, urging an immediate council to push negotiation over bloodshed. Earl stressed that arming the villagers stood as their urgent first priority. Doubts rose if peace talks invited disaster from an undefeated commander. Yet Earl countered that proving local strength was essential, using the dense forest to bottleneck the vanguard. With regular troops slowed by woods, King Fermi relied entirely on elite guards he dared not risk, making a negotiated standoff the ideal path to warn off the crown. Retrieving his personal signet ring, Earl revealed a vital bargaining chip tied directly to his bloodline that could influence Kingdom of Firm. Plunging deeper into the dark forest, troops under King Fermi debated hunting down the escapees to crush the rebellion once and for all. Coldly dismissing mercy, a commander replied that sparing the refugees was never an option, and every last rebel would die. Compliance would follow, driven by brutal necessity despite the heavy burden it placed on everyone involved. Pride stirred within him, watching his soldiers stand firm, remembering how killing Leidos won his crown. King Rosati's bitterness over Leidos fueled his contempt, regretting the fateful blunder of letting the royal child escape. Certain doom awaited any child cast into the great forest, or so his followers firmly believed back then. Halting abruptly, the guide announced their destination, shocked to find a settlement tucked away here. Astonished, the monarch pressed for confirmation about the legendary village shielded by Griffin. Paralyzed by dread of defeat, oh God, the ruler feared his troops would stop spreading his grand myths. Griffin allegedly taught him survival secrets deep within the trackless wilderness, or so the tale went. Roughly 100 residents lived here, judging by the cluster of houses and cultivated fields ahead. Watchtowers and sturdy wooden fences stood defensively, designed specifically to keep hungry wolves at bay. Earl predicted this exact scenario, finding the villagers already armed and braced for confrontation. Restraining his troops, the ruler ordered them to hold back to prevent any unnecessary casualties. Almas stepped forward boldly, declaring himself the representative and leader of the village settlement. Punishing deserters brought the king here, but Almas defied him, refusing to let any villagers die. Intrigued, the monarch gestured for Almas to approach closer so they could converse directly. Almas prayed the plan would hold, stepping forward with a courage that earned the king's grudging respect. Closing the distance, Almas asked to step nearer, though the monarch noted his visible tension. Puzzled by the defiance, the king demanded an explanation, offering Almas a chance to plead his case. Begging for mercy for the small village met swift refusal, as deserters required proper discipline. Presenting Earl's ring as proof of a commoner's passing, Almas pleaded for their lives to be spared. King Rosati paused before demanding Almas surrender every ring and property held in the village. Mercy meant spare clothes and lives, confirming Earl earlier earlier warning in Almas' mind. Stripping everyone bare meant certain death. Almas warned before shifting to a rigid tone. Burning the village to ash would follow if royal greed took everything down to zero. Raw fear gripped the king because Almas' village possessed zero military strength for war. Haggling settled the toll at 70%, a brutal cut Almas reluctantly accepted. Avoiding bloodshed left Almas relieved, prompting Tetra to ask what target came next for Kingdom of Rosa. Earl begged to join the audience with King Rosati in the Kingdom of Rosa, but Almas refused the request alone. Stepping forward with trembling resolve, Tetra insisted on accompanying Almas anyway. Distrust edged her voice. She did not believe he would go alone and asked him to say it again. Tetra told Almas that traveling together revealed his constant habit of fleeing to prevent widespread destruction. Refugees starved under harsh royal edicts, stirring royal guilt deep inside Tetra's chest. Solitude defined her lonely existence until she confronted him about the burden. Tetra insisted that if she didn't want to do something, nobody could force her into compliance. Fear of the crown ended today because she claimed the right to her own future. Victory over this crisis would surely lead to Almas taking her as his lawful wife. Stunned reins slipped in Almas' hands as he awkwardly urged Tetra down from her horse, just like Ron expected. Ron and Soyeon shared that exact sibling bond in a village built purely on friendship. Rejection hit hard when Almas declared manhood barred him from accepting Tetra and her romantic proposal. True marriage belonged to whoever truly earned those bold words straight from her heart. Tetra beams with radiant joy as Almas announces their swift marriage agreement. King Rosati of the Kingdom of Rosa awaits them, fully aware that mortal peril still stalks the realm. Almas details the severe village famine, securing King Rosati's promise of a year's provisions. Protecting refugees borders the strict frontier, yet King Rosati spares the village, needing live taxpayers rather than dead ones before turning his piercing gaze toward Tetra. Stunned by the sudden royal scrutiny, Tetra recalls the king visiting her father 10 long years ago, demanding proof under threat of punishment. King Rosati insists on seeing the hidden family crest and gold ring Tetra tucked beneath a tree, crying out that God has not abandoned him. Almas chuckles warmly. King Rosati impatiently demands experts examine Tetra's precious golden ring before they pivot to discussing state centralization with Raymond. Centralized government power will command the army and collect taxes for King Rosati across many fragmented regions, unifying national strength under the crown. Reducing strong families' political influence requires absolute unity, prompting King Rosati to ask Almas how wielding total army authority will reshape the kingdom. Almas explained that shifting political power away from aristocratic families toward the common people strengthens the sovereign's protective reach. Raymond worries royal authority might diminish, but Almas insists the crown guarantees popular protection against powerful houses, sparking fierce debate over monarchic versus noble power dynamics. Republican ideas from the Kesha City League intrigue Adi and Adelia, though King Rosati remains skeptical about popular uprisings. Adelia embraces Republican thought, despite King Rosati's skepticism, though Almas and Raymond see company rebellions threaten to derail their grand political vision. Corporate rebellions plague the realm, yet King Rosati demonstrates that centralized governance is taking root despite fierce opposition, much to Almas' dismay. Raymond listens intently before stunning everyone by declaring he will adopt Almas as his son, shocking his brother and later admitting his desire for Almas to claim the throne. Almas might be 16 and unconventional, yet Raymond defends his genius against critics who dismiss him as an ordinary commoner. Raymond faces immediate objections from his fiancée regarding bypassing royal blood for an ordinary commoner. Reckless obsession with wealth, wine, and women makes claiming the crown dangerous, prompting King Rosati to warn of national division. Family Diabol's destruction proves sufficient victory, though Raymond rejects his brother's persistent demands. Interrogating his brother further, Raymond questions if marrying the daughter of a double royal murderer is truly wise. King Rosati hesitates. House Diabol, Rosishi, and others quietly execute Raymond's centralized destabilizing plan, questioning her brother's true faith in this newcomer. King Rosati questions whether such thoroughness is wise, wondering why his brother introduced another young man into the master plan. Raymond evaluates Almas, Griffin's second son, noting his divine influence and political traits. Political advantages aside, Raymond worries about fracturing family unity, arguing that true harmony remains out of reach. Almas and Tetra propose forging an alliance with the Ash family, aligning neatly with Raymond's overarching strategy. As Griffin's son, Almas fills the political gap left by the Ash family's decline, and King Rosati approves the maneuver. Time remains short for deciding the throne, leaving Almas summoned and informed of his new status as a Raymond's boy. Returning to the village from the royal palace, Almas hears Ruru screaming and rushes toward the commotion. Ron warns that Ruru's relatives keep harassing her. Almas scolds their blindness to her stress and demands they leave her alone. Their stubborn refusal forces Almas to declare that continued harassment will lead to immediate expulsion from the nearby village. Observing the fallout, Bartolo notes that village growth requires laws, though punishing relatives directly risks Earl's political dissatisfaction. When Almas asks for Bartolo's opinion, he suggests digging a defensive canal around the forest to halt the advancing army of King Fermi. Almas asks about Bolton's current status, learning he has spent a year leading troops against King Fermi despite his reputation for drinking. Past command experience cannot shake his drunkard image, prompting Bartolo to propose a friendly spar with wooden swords. Almas accepts instantly, viewing the clash as vital training for the upcoming war against King Fermi. Bartolo shocks Almas by instantly parrying his strike, leaving Almas to apologize for holding back as memories of Uria's warnings surface. Calm observation reveals that defeating Bartolo without innate abilities will prove nearly impossible in a real duel. Almas volunteers to join the troops with Ron. Meanwhile, Uria visits the training grounds to explain how his blessings amplify loyal followers. Standard blessings differ entirely, because this power boosts physical strength for men, whereas it grants voodoo capabilities to women. Uria's forced marriage to Rhaegar devastates Raymond, who begs the king to let her marry for love despite receiving no other choice. Almas spends his spare time crafting military gear for Tetra, who recently arrived from beyond the village. Confiding in Tetra, Almas reveals he is concocting black powder, China's earliest explosive formula. King Fermi's escalating threats forced Almas to abandon his initial vow and share this lethal secret. He details the precise chemical mixture of charcoal, sulfur, and potassium nitrate required for the explosive. Pulling Tetra away from the volatile workshop, Almas admits the unstable compound lacks proper safety measures. The mixture detonates violently, and Almas warns Tetra that adding metal fragments turns a loud blast into a fatal trap. Presenting his invention a month later, Almas briefs Bartholo on new combat tactics designed to crush King Fermi in the Kingdom of Ferme. Almas questions the flawed spear and shield strategy on the left flank, noting the critical weakness of the right side. Bolton admits battle outcomes rely on luck, but Almas proposes flanking with cavalry, and Bartolo notes not everyone can be a knight. Astonished by a sudden demonstration, Bartholo demands more black powder, though Almas warns him against dangerous overconfidence. 2 full years slip by as Almas and the villagers relentlessly drill and prepare for the inevitable war. Receiving news of clan defections to the Ash family, King Fermi remains unfazed because Tetra was found and the rival kingdom of Rosa has tragically fallen. Dismissing caution, the king orders a surprise assault through the kingdom of Rosa Forest, ignoring Yadra's soldiers terrified of Griffin. Deserters expose the secret forest path, convincing the king that the legendary beast Griffin will never intervene. Brushing off past raids, the king vows to crush any defiant village, yet a hidden witch sends a bird spirit to spy. After sending its third message, the bird spirit is brutally attacked, leaving the panicked witch terrified of divine wrath. Realizing eagles never hunt in coordinated packs, the witch senses hostile magic lurking deep within the forbidden woods. Convinced the tiny village harbors 3 voodoo witches, she knows they must flee immediately to survive. Graham and Ruru capture the surveillance bird, and Almas dismisses Ruru's fears of Fermi by declaring them open enemies. Desperate pleas flood the royal palace, as Earl urgently demands immediate military assistance against the advancing threat. Earl delivered word that reinforcements would take 3 days, yet King Rosati Saadi's troops already marched upon learning of the fall of the kingdom. Letters from Raymond outlined enemy chaos tactics, asking Almas to stall their forces for 3 full days. King Fermi of the Kingdom of Firm prepared 3,200 soldiers, sending 200 toward the village and leading 3,000 for a direct assault on the capital. Mobilizing 3,200 troops risked everything against 1,500 foes, but the king traded the crown with House Dibel to avert total war. This secret pact meant the second largest power in Modal would stay completely out of the upcoming battle. Rhaegar might still betray them for local gratitude, yet he remained manageable by seeking alliances across borders. With enemy forces expelled and non-participation secured, the capital likely held only 4,000 defenders. Hearing that the numbers differed by only 1,000, jubilant soldiers already toasted their impending victory inside the Kingdom of Rose's palace. From the watchtower, Almas spotted 200 enemy soldiers advancing precisely as intelligence had predicted. Ruru considered shifting into an eagle, but Almas urged calm, reminding everyone to trust the fortress walls and their defensive strategy. Recognizing that the main royal division was absent, Almas faced a demanding commander who loudly ordered the gates opened immediately, demanding all stored food supplies be surrendered. The enemy pressed forward instantly after Almas denied their aggressive demand. Initial traps caught a few soldiers before dense arrow volleys suppressed the defenders, pinning Graham down at his firing spot. Heavy shields blocked incoming stones, wounding several defenders. Almas ordered the injured moved to safety. Ron hurled stones relentlessly as Soyon noted their ineffective attacks against the steady rain of hostile arrows, while the Kingdom of Rosa reeled and Raymond hoarded his troops. Raymond recognized a golden political opportunity to weaken rivals who hoarded troops instead of sending reinforcements. A courier burst in to report that Almas had crushed the shortcutting force, capturing their general with 0 village casualties out of 180. Stunned by the triumph, Raymond demanded confirmation before briefing Almas on their matching force of 3,000 troops. Military genius did not guarantee victory against equal numbers, leading Almas to deduce their cautious opponent only fought when certain. Raymond ultimately appointed his son to execute the commander's direct orders and defeat King Fermi. 2 years have flown by since Almas joined his ranks, mastering every nuance of military tactics. Raymond assigned Bartholomew and Boros to accompany Almas, refusing to let his son make critical national choices alone. Word reached Almas that village friends wanted to join Raymond's smiles, knowing Almas would command safely from the rear. Almas readied his troops for departure. Raymond rode alongside him, barking orders not to die out there. Bartolo teased Almas about cold feet before taking command to let him rest. Those soldiers whispered doubts about Griffin's young son. Columns split toward their objectives, and Almas insisted to Bartholomew that he belonged in the vanguard. Bartolo scolded Almas, recalling Raymond's strict warning, but Almas begged for one chance to prove his father wrong. Yielding to pressure, Bartholo agreed Almas could spearhead the charge to capture Tetra, though warnings echoed to avoid foolish risks. Soyen reported the enemy was an hour away in Bartholomew, praising the wizard's skill now that Almas stood at Raymond's side. Backed by powerful allies, Almas stared at the sky. Bartholomew noted that today's fierce battle was entirely unavoidable. Almas stared in absolute shock at the sheer sophistication of the enemy's advanced battlefield equipment. Bartholo explained how the company kept warriors restless. Tetra compared their massive cavalry numbers to the previous village raid. Almas roared a commanding battle cry, instantly snapping his scattered forces into a rigid defensive formation. Tetra blinked in utter confusion, demanding to know what strategy he meant, but Almas admitted to Bartolo he just shouted to sound cool. Unleashing 2 years of brutal training, Almas urged his troops forward as the enemy swiftly adapted their formation. Enemy forces converged heavily on the right wing, revealing that Rosewood intended to crush their elite vanguard directly. Almas grinned at the bold gambit, scoffing that such basic tactics would never work against his cunning mind. Although the right flank appeared dangerously fragile from the outside, their ironclad confidence guaranteed an impending victory. Rhea spearheaded the brutal opening charge, mocking enemy horsemen who foolishly underestimated a young girl on the battlefield. Rosewood charged close behind his fearless comrade, shouting frantically frantic warnings for Rhea to watch her flanks. Almas tells her to fall back immediately and leaves the vanguard entirely in her capable hands. Rosewood and Rhea decimate the cavalry. Almas watches this slaughter, noting how loyalty boosts physical might. 10 explosive spears remain from village defense, deploying black powder and magical paper to sow chaos among King Ferme enemies. King Ferme's baffled kingdom of Fermi forces divide to surround Almas, believing victory is certain despite the explosions. Refusing to lose his defense, Almas charges forward directly into the closing enemy ranks. Enemy commanders instantly identify him as the leader, Almas. Villagers roar that Almas is Griffin's son, Raymond's adopted boy, and Tetra's protector. Almas roars his title as supreme commander across the battlefield. King Ferme orders his swift assassination, but Almas defies them with imperial might. The taunt draws all eyes, giving Rhea and Rosewood room to butcher the cavalry silently. Realization hits too late as Almas plunges into combat, completely breaking Fermi's assault. Fermi calls it terrifying, dismissing any doubt about Almas on the battlefield. Almas presses the attack relentlessly against Fermi, mocking the enemy's fragile confidence. Holding back full strength to save spears, Almas realizes shields are useless against Bartholo tactics. Remaining defensive, Almas waits until the enemy catches him off guard again. Observing his imperfect technique, the enemy spots one overwhelming strength. The king claims Almas has lost, yet Almas plots a turnaround despite freezing earlier. Caught off guard, Almas is forced to unleash his absolute maximum power. A brutal strike shatters the enemy's spear, demanding they find a replacement weapon. Warning of regret in single combat, Almas faces Fermi, who insists on a fair victory. Almas casts his sword aside, choosing to duel with a spear and trusting his superior technique. Though holding back his swordsmanship, Almas knew his mastery of the spear gave him a massive edge. Highlighting the stark reach advantage of the spear over the sword, Almas forced the enemy to watch, closing the distance with astonishing spearwork. Almas effortlessly bypassed their defensive perimeter. Almas explained his kendo footwork as Kingdom of Firm soldiers desperately tried to shield themselves away. Almas blocked their desperate breakthroughs with overwhelming strength, leaving King Fermi cornered and defeated at death's door. Gasping for breath, the dying king dreamt of a united island, begged Almas to become a great king, and entrusted him with his only love. Praising Almas as a genius, even Griffin feared. The army erupted into cheers over King Fermi's final defeat. Almas roared to keep his men focused. Ron gripped his sword and hailed the enemy leader's defeat. Bartholo praised Almas as enemy forces crumbled, leaving the capital undefended and allowing Almas to capture King Castle Farm without shedding blood, popping wine bottles to celebrate their swift victory. Bartholo joked about reclaiming the castle from Lados and fulfilling his final wish. Almas gazed toward his homeland as the villagers arrived in droves to greet him. Almas rushed forward to embrace Tetra, deeply relieved that every single villager survived his campaign. Ruru and Bartolo celebrated the victory. Meanwhile, Bartholo secured the land inherited from the Lados Ash family for the people. Within a month, the kingdom of Rosa fell under the Rosa Empire. King Rosas fully recovered from his illness. Amidst universal rejoicing, the long-awaited wedding day of Almas and Tetra finally arrived. Well-wishers gathered around the ceremony to offer heartfelt blessings from all the noble families. Delivering a wedding gift from House Dibel, a soldier explained they approved the marriage between Almas and Tetra, yet opposed the territorial annexation. Tetra reviewed the gifts and invited Almas to join the celebration, but he preferred quietly watching the festivities with her. Looking out at the crowd, Almas reflected on their grueling journey from the Romalia forest and thanked everyone. King Rosati furiously reprimanded Raymond for seizing power during his unconsciousness in the kingdom of Rosa, though he conceded Almas proved his worth and would stabilize the Ash family. Raymond received orders to prepare for their wedding elsewhere. Meanwhile, Seimei arrived happily at the bustling trading city of Claris. Gatekeepers welcomed Seimei, explaining that entry remained free for non-traders, though stays exceeding a month incurred standard city taxes. Seimei rescued Izmiya from a thief, bonded over her architectural dreams, and shared his goal of reaching the ocean. Izmiya requested to join Seimei, pointing out that female architects faced limited career prospects in their current city. Confident in her talent, she sought new opportunities while King Rosati fainted. Meanwhile, Raymond convened a council meeting to transfer Ash territory territorial authority to Almas. Rhaegar Dibel furiously accused Raymond of handing vital land to an unknown orphan, but Raymond defended Almas against cowardly critics like Rhaegar. Rhaegar retaliated by mocking Almas and questioning his low status before his adoption into the family. Raymond fired back that Almas carried Griffin's blood, assuring Rhaegar that military advisors and the council fully backed him. Strategic peace negotiations relied heavily on the advisors' crucial role following Almas's recent battlefield triumphs. Raymond forced a vote through the council, deeply infuriating Rhaegar and prompting silent curses from Raymond himself. Royal blood granted Raymond immense influence, letting him sway opinions safely from his seat beside the king. Raymond urged Rhaegar to remain calm and wait out the king's final 2 years, knowing the throne would naturally pass to Rhaegar next, especially with Urya by his side. Pledging loyalty to House Dibel, Raymond confirmed he would support whoever ultimately claimed the throne as the strongest clan. Warning Rhaegar not to underestimate Almas as merely lucky, Raymond vowed to destroy him personally if desperate measures became necessary. Caution remained paramount during every sensitive political discussion held with King Rosati of the Kingdom of Rosa behind closed doors. King Rosati reluctantly approved Raymond and the hasty wedding between Almas and Urya to preempt a bloody civil war against House Dibel in the Kingdom of Rosa, while Ash refugees settled in Earl. Relief washed over Almas, thrilled to have her standing firmly by his side through every upcoming trial. Surrounding lush forests would soon become their official domain, prompting Earl to stay behind and protect the villagers. Earl expressed shock that every single refugee chose to stay put rather than pack up and return home. Tetra remained completely unbothered, proving life within Almas village outpaced any nation. Almas smiled and insisted this duty fell to everyone, then asked Boros about his position. Boros explained his advisor role covering order, territory defense, and stopping voodoo magic. Almas then learned he had to handle tax assessments owed to King Rosati of the Kingdom of Rosa, quietly groaning at the sheer workload. Bartolo reassured Almas that the duties were manageable, offering fair cultural-based examples. Almas shared this burden with Boros and Bartholo. Bartholo managed peace and order. Boros handled legal decisions, and Almas freely reassigned tasks whenever his preferences shifted. Bartolo urged Almas to rejuvenate the realm, and Almas acknowledged the cash needed for taxes, suspected wealth manipulation, and scheduled a population survey to clarify numbers. Almas prepared a paper form for the population survey. Almas logged age, gender, and wealth, noting a severe lack of literates outside Tetra and 10 others, realizing this historically blocked surveys and complicated taxes. Almas ordered a standard form where people entered even numbers, making filling out the sheets simple for illiterate individuals. Tetra questioned if they faced a massive manual task, but Almas smiled and proposed woodblock printing like large stamps to carve characters, apply ink, and press onto paper. Ron and Rosewood agreed the method was feasible, leaving the tax rate as the next hurdle because Ash was classified as a remote area, pushing Almas toward low rates. Almas set a 10% harvest and labor tax, abolishing personal income tax. Boros called skipping personal taxes bold, risking government revenue to burden citizens. Instead, high land taxes came through forced collection from owners, though forced collection failed, so he targeted willing risk-takers reaping rewards. Bartolo agreed to revive the land, reminding everyone that revival required funding. Almas planned to distribute rice threshers widely, despite knowing it risked farmer job losses. Almas offset job losses with subsidies and industrial paper production profits for new employment, though other industry expansions and rice crop rotation were postponed. Almas lit up when discussing alcohol. Almas tasted the brew first, noting brewing needed specialized gear, and since they had only one, they needed skilled blacksmiths working with copper instead of just iron. Almas smiled, confirmed copper worked, dismissed investor worries by lowering taxes to general surprise, and steered the meeting toward military matters as the final topic of the day, admitting ignorance as a nominal commander. Almas jokingly asked Bartolo for his military assessment after sharing a drink, prompting Bartolo to laugh and agree to present the plan. Almas feels a profound duty to protect his land, purge internal criminals, and block invaders by building a strong local military force. Ron asks about strategy, so Almas notes their few dozen fighters and and warns that the neighboring kingdom of Demorgar poses the immediate threat to King Rosa and Morsar. Bartholomew calculates 50,000 total soldiers, yet wide borders restrict deployment to only 10 or 20,000 troops. Tetra recalls fighting firm with 3,000 troops, and Bartholo notes more soldiers can be mobilized if a general orders war. Bartolo praises King Fermi's permanent armies over temporary ones, warning that sudden wars expose the danger of having no standing troops ready, making 300 soldiers wasteful. Almas knows defeated enemy soldiers pose a revenge risk or riot threat after their king falls, requiring careful post-war management. Production issues drive Almas to order higher gunpowder stockpiles immediately, securing critical defense funds before hostilities erupt. Almas and 3 allies travel from the kingdom of Rosa to Claris, where Tetra prepares the magic circle, and Ron learns Graham must lend massive loans. Almas insists they can repay large capital investments. In contrast, Graham wonders why they bypass King Rosati for financing in the kingdom of Rosa. Almas urges calm about negotiating with the Claris merchant introduced by King Rosati of the kingdom of Rosa, hoping fair terms will protect their profits. Almas displays practical writing paper samples to Ainz, who tests writing on them and approves of the alternative to papyrus. Ainz suggests doubling papyrus prices for quick investment recovery, yet asks if Almas can scale up production to match papyrus rates. Almas projects massive market profits from paper. Meanwhile, Ainz tastes the wine, praising its unprecedented strength and quality. Ainz suggests pricing the premium wine at 20 times the regular market rate to maximize immediate luxury sales. Almas counters with an aggressive price of at least 30 times standard rates, shocking the room with his bold valuation. Ainz smiles and accepts the terms, acknowledging the brutal reality of climbing out of heavy debt obligations. Ainz offers triple the proposed loan if Almas lowers paper prices until total debt repayment, and Almas accepts the deal. Almas secures steady secondary income from paper sales despite the strict loan terms, ensuring sustainable financial growth. Weeks pass as Almas rules Ash, with Ron and Soyeon collecting official taxes from the hard-working local villagers. The village chief delivers 4 small tax bags, prompting Ron to inspect the payment because it falls short of the expected 10%. Soyeon reports 10 missing bags discovered later, prompting Ron to question the defiant village chief over the stolen grain. Ron orders the elder arrested immediately when the man refuses to admit his guilt. Statistical records expose the elder's fabricated yields, and Soyeon uncovers hidden wheat packed inside a secret cellar. Embezzlement charges drop as the chief attempts to defend his corrupt tax skimming. The chief tries bribing Ron with a share of the stolen loot to keep the operation quiet. Soyeon tacks on bribery charges totaling 70 lashes, leaving the weeping elder begging God for mercy back at Ash Castle. Earl arrives at Ash Castle, listening as Ron and Soyeon detail their encounter with the corrupt official. Collecting 10% of regional grain yields still funds the government, satisfying their treasury goals. Lower tax burdens relieve farmers as the Uniform Equipment Initiative progresses successfully. Boros uses borrowed capital for quality steel, producing new rice threshing machines for local farmers. Advanced tools empower farmers to cultivate barren land, driving local crop yields upward. Boros reminds Almas about the upcoming harvest festival, where nobles gather across Rosias. Almas plans to avoid festival conflicts. Meanwhile, Ron Rosewood handles nationwide military recruitment. Public panic erupts over the military announcement, fearing renewed war or lost farm labor. Voluntary recruitment targets men aged 15 to 30, promising grain pay and weapons from God to guard God's residents. Rosewood gives villagers 2 weeks to apply, promising a competitive selection process for 300 spots. To Almas's surprise, unemployed former soldiers and a former Kingsguard flood the recruitment drive, turning away from crime toward steady service. Ron worries whether limited resources can sustain an expanded army alongside recently freed farmers. Almas praises Ron's economic foresight, assuring him their agricultural economy remains stable enough. Rosewood questions why he was chosen as cavalry commander over Boros to manage transferred slaves. Almas noted Boros lacked cavalry experience, making Rosewood the ideal horse commander with Rhea ties to court Rhea. Ron handled infantry. Graham archers and Tetra delivered 100 horses. Almas had Rhea translate his declaration as master of the war slaves. A bold slave demanded food, but Almas told Tetra to prepare rations and promised one bath. Rosewood stepped up to manage the new recruits, placing them in the cavalry unit and promising that exceptional combat performance could eventually earn their hard-fought freedom. Accepting these terms, the rebellious slaves agreed to work diligently under one strict condition. They demanded to meet someone who possessed the genuine authority to grant freedom. Rosewood wagered that if Verger won their duel, he would secure freedom. Otherwise, absolute obedience to Rhea was required. Promptly reporting back, Rosewood briefed Almas on the standoff, gathering everyone to watch the scheduled contest. Rosewood claimed a swift victory in the duel, stunning onlookers with exceptional combat efficiency. Hines watched closely as Rosewood effortlessly dodged the incoming strike before launching a decisive counterattack. Ines recognized that ordinary fighters lacked such speed, noting how Rosewood blended natural agility with the Emperor's blessing. Almas and Tetra warmly welcomed the returning victors inside the gates of Ash Palace. Almas confirmed Rosewood had smooth cavalry training and political stability. Meanwhile, Soyeon reported an unverified young couple seeking entry without identification papers. Weighing security risks, Almas considered dismissing the strangers before his curiosity won out, deciding an interview was worth the potential hazard. Almas questioned Soyeon further, learning the female visitor was an architect and her companion an explorer from the distant Scarlet Empire, seeking architectural work to boost the realm. Stepping forward, the self-proclaimed world explorer boasted of journeys spanning every known continent. Almas welcomed the visitor inside his office, where the architect displayed sketches of houses, bridges, and siege engines, questioning why they targeted his minor territory. Seeking a rising startup environment over obscurity in a massive empire, the architect earned Almas's provisional housing assignment pending a performance trial. Seimei introduced himself, explaining his origins lay far to the west within the borders of Silkland. Having just finished mapping the edge of the world, Seimei sought to publish his travels in a comprehensive book. Finding traditional sheepskin and papyrus too costly, Seimei identified paper from Almas's kingdom as the ideal medium for his writings. Spotting a brilliant publicity angle, Almas agreed to supply the paper on the strict condition that he received the manuscript first. Heading to the capital city of Roses for the Harvest Festival, Almas gazed around in wonder, asking if this truly was the heart of the Almas Festival, and noting it outshone their wedding. Raymond stood waiting by the gate to welcome his son back after their long absence, and Almas hoisted a large wooden barrel of celebration wine right onto the stone. Raymond warned him to go easy on the strong drink, promised to wrangle the others, and directed them toward the estate grounds before discussing family business later. Weaving past Tetra, Raymond scanned the swirling crowd of influential nobles and spotted familiar faces from the wedding day mingling near the banquet hall. Almas smiled to keep friendly alliances intact, though Tetra reminded him to stay cautious around Rhaegar since their territories bordered each other, despite no active conflict. Holding 2 drinks out, Almas asked Tetra to pick one. Families and children bustled past them, eager to join the vibrant festivities unfolding across the courtyard. Tetra joked about having a boy first, so he could train as a warrior faster, and Almas laughed in agreement, wondering why Tetra brought up children out of nowhere. Continuing the light-hearted banter about family planning, Almas chuckled that he just wanted a balanced mix of kids, rather than an army of them running around. Brushing off the topic for another day, Almas decided they should focus on hunting down some food amidst the sprawling party. A curious crowd swarmed Almas, badgering him to recount his clash with King Fermi, and recalling the monarch's parting words about securing his happiness. Almas weighed the heavy memory against his deep affection for Tetra, knowing his partner would stand by him through anything. Teasing voices from surrounding girls hinted at becoming his second wife, making Almas realize the crowd was angling for political matches. Trapped by the pressing crowd, Almas found himself shoved steadily toward the edge of the courtyard. Tetra yanked Almas clear of the suffocating throng with a sharp tug. Whispering an excuse about regional delicacies, Tetra led him toward a food stall featuring dishes foreign to their homeland. Almas let out a long sigh of relief, offering repeated thanks to Tetra for the timely rescue from the social chaos. Tetra calmly allowed that remarriage wasn't forbidden as long as family peace remained intact, prompting Almas to joke right back. Rhaegar closed in on their spot. Tetra spotted the rival lord first, beating any formal announcement. Muttering about the arrogant entourage trailing behind the lord, Almas braced himself for trouble from the imposing visitor. Rhaegar boomed a hearty greeting and offered handshakes of congratulations to Tetra, apologizing with a sly excuse about falling ill on their wedding day. Tetra squeezed Almas's hand tightly, wearing a brave smile that barely masked her lingering regret. Hidden fingers twisted subtly, urging him to look after his health before everything else. Rhaegar grimaced through sharp pain, snapping free. Rhaegar unleashed a furious torrent of curses at Almas. Angry shouts echoed across the room, drawing the sharp gaze of nearby subordinates. Walking away, Almas warned Ron against taking the bait because bunching up invited encirclement. Yuria greeted Almas and Tetra, glancing over as Rhaegar openly flirted with nearby girls. Almas prioritized Griffin's orphans, wishing Tetra happiness despite his complicated feelings for Yuria. Passing by quietly, Yuria pressed a folded note into his palm with a request for a private meeting. Popel approached Almas, asking him to recount his legendary clash against King Fermi in the Kingdom of Fermi. King Fermi's dying words echoed in his mind, carrying a solemn wish for enduring happiness. Almas weighed the heavy message, firmly choosing Tetra's steadfast love and unchanging devotion. Sitting before Almas, Tetra acknowledged her traditional role as a wife, yielding final authority to him. Almas urged Tetra to speak her genuine mind rather than burying her true feelings. Declaring her deep love, Tetra trusted Almas to make wise decisions under any circumstances. Tetra insisted Almas handle Yuria himself instead of outsourcing the painful choice to anyone else. Deep inside the Romelia forest, Almas set out on a dedicated quest to track down Griffin. Laying out the situation, Almas watched Griffin realize his true intentions regarding Yuria. Griffin warned that marrying a boss's daughter meant facing fierce political opposition and civil war. Griffin advised Almas to marry Yuria anyway, if that was truly what his heart desired. Almas warned that the brewing tension could ignite a full-scale war harmful to them. Griffin countered that whether they backed Almas hinged entirely on their own choice. Almas need not fret over internal faction conflict or question if winning was required. Almas firmly maintained that victory was his only option. Listening closely, Griffin recalled his own ruthless past of killing without guilt. Griffin noted that humans hunted like pack animals, killing without remorse or protection. Almas stood apart, enforcing rules he bypassed himself. Almas remained outside standard herd rules. Griffin argued he should protect them as ruler regardless of herd status. He must fulfill herd duties and focus on the broader picture rather than trivia. Griffin warned that impossible events never happen, noting how lion leaders kill predecessors' cubs. When Almas hesitates, it breeds regret, but forfeiting the choice to Griffin brings the deepest remorse. Almas weighed both grim choices, thanked Griffin for his counsel, and reached his verdict. Inside the kingdom of Rosa court of King Rosati, he asked Almas if his final decision was ready. Almas first expressed gratitude for the deliberation, knowing his bold request was awkward. He formally asked for Yuria's hand in marriage and turned his homeland toward her. Raymond laughed at the swift verdict, relieved everyone could skip weeks of persuasion. Yuria blinked in confusion, asking if the king gave only 3 days. The king gasped, having planned a month since decisions took longer. Almas softly spoke Yuria's name. The king laughed off his daughter's startled antics. The king expressed sincere gratitude to those who helped Almas reach this conclusion. Almas declared his intent to unite the Adelina Peninsula, laughed off the bold ambition as a joke, and prepared for his wedding and ascension. Almas urged expediting the event within 2 days, leaving the king scrambling to ready troops. Questioning Almas on marching straight on dissenting nobles after coronation, the king offered to abdicate immediately. Lacking military renown. Almas heard the king predict a Morar invasion within 3 years and promise voodoo witch cures. Telling Tetra in secret, Almas and Yuria faced her amused laughter and eager questions about Yuria's true apologies. Confessing her wish to become main wife, Yuria sparked Tetra's cheerful reassurance that status meant nothing to her. Yuria bristled when Tetra claimed love outweighed status, suspecting a challenge for Almas and his primary wife's seat. Almas gathered everyone for a room meeting where Ron locked doors. Boris gasped, and Bartholo sensed major news coming. Soyen felt immense relief over the news, having dreaded Yuria marrying into Rhaegar and threatening their stability. Rosewood pressed Almas on the Deeble War, drawing an apology before Graham snapped, and Boros pivoted to Tetra's standing in Ash Bartholo, cheering Princess Yuria, finding her prince. Everyone knew rival noble houses would fiercely oppose the upcoming union. Every single noble faction across the realm stood ready to block the marriage with total opposition. Crafting a counterplan, Almas aimed to conquer King de Morgar to neutralize border noble dissent between Ash and House Dybel before invasion struck. Gilbert, the second cousin of Lord Dybel, accused the village chief of tax fraud, seized seed stocks, and drove off the old man demanding full coin. Villagers wept as Gilbert's men seized the planting seeds required for next season's survival and grain harvests. Demanding crushing interest on seeds, Gilbert propositioned an outsider named Ismia, taking her away to the border fortress. Spotting architectural blind spots in the 200-year-old fortress, Almas proposed sourcing superior stone from the Ash region or House Dybel with Tetra instead of dangerous areas. Agreeing instantly, Almas departed for the acquisition. Meanwhile, Ismea refined her fortress blueprints. Returning to the castle, Almas and Tetra learned from Ron and Boros about 200 unexpected refugees arriving from Debel. Boros reported 200 refugees slipped past notice, prompting Almas to question who knew before border patrols found them. Handling the infiltration quietly, refugee delegates stepped forward to beg Almas for sanctuary inside his territory. Crippled by exorbitant rents and crushing taxes, taking 30% of their income on clothes, fruit, marriage, and even Al-Masrum, the refugees fled north. Almas puzzled over the taxes, but Ron explained the wedding fee functioned as a gift to God instead of the family. The girl claimed family Dibble relatives committed robbery and murder freely. Earl investigated the girl's claims, returning to ask Almas if they should declare they understood everything and head back to their people now. Desperate families occasionally faced the grim reality of selling their own children just to survive. Almas asked Boros for his perspective. Learning House D earned a dark reputation around Lagos. Boros expressed shock that arriving refugees faced such brutal conditions. Almas weighed his move because Rhaegar guarded exits closely. Meanwhile, Boros noted helping refugees legally required dual lord permission, risking trouble unless Kingdom of Rosa intervened. Rhea directed Almas to hide refugees in a forest village. Days later in Ash, she warned Almas that Rhaegar arrived with guards, prompting Almas to tell Soyon to prepare a polite meal. Rhaegar walked in, expecting a tense reception, but Almas laughed heartily, offered hospitality, and began eating slowly to lower his guard. Rhaegar seemed unusually compliant, leaving Almas wondering if the food relaxed him. Finishing his meal, Almas asked about his visit, and Rhaegar confirmed refugees fled into this sector. Feigning ignorance, Almas apologized smoothly and promised an immediate investigation, ensuring his expression remained completely blank. Confident every trace of the refugees was gone, Almas cited kingdom laws regarding territorial movement requiring permission from God, hoping Rhaegar would grasp the hint. Rhaegar promised to report immediately if any hidden refugees surfaced across the border. Almas and Tetra watched the departing guards. They knew no trap had sprung yet and waited for the next development. Rhaegar stormed back, furiously summoning Bernard and Gilbert. Gilbert insisted refugees could not cross Ash unnoticed, yet Clyde noted a complete lack of court evidence. Despite missing hard proof, Rhaegar succeeded in delivering a clear, unmistakable warning. Future conflicts with Almas could now trigger this unresolved border incident as leverage. A refugee wave hit Ash, and Gilbert sent 1,000 soldiers, while Almas answered Boros with 700 men and 300 in reserve. As Bartholo confirmed his 1,000 Rhaegar, Dybel stood ready. Almas warned Bartholo against starting unnecessary wars that could jeopardize succession plans. Though Bartholo Bartholo departed early to manage potential contingencies. Bernard advised bringing troops forward, but Almas calmly met him, promising peace unless ash borders were crossed. Bartholo watched exhausted refugees struggle to cross the river barrier. Hearing desperate cries for mercy, Bartholomew watched the barrier fall as the situation turned into a brutal massacre. Ron yelled for Almas to rescue the helpless children, but Almas realized he could not rush in alone without a plan. Among the refugees fleeing toward the river, Almas focused on a man whose wife was taken by Gilbert. Just days earlier, that tragic wife had finally returned home. She hanged herself immediately, leaving him hollow. Staying turned the village into a nightmare as neighbors died brutally, and though he begged Almas, no one understood his grief. Desperate for retribution, he devised a reckless plan to force Gilbert into the open. Loose arrows flew as he used the chaos to charge Almas, and when an Ash tribe archer dropped a shaft near the river, Bartholo asked if it was an intentional provocation or a mere accident. Rejecting accident, Bartholo weighed war risks, noting no one could shoot royalty before protecting refugees, understanding the dead man's pain, and knowing his Almas alliance was sealed. Hoisting the arrow, he declared House Dibel at war to spark Ash's fury at Gilbert's provocation. Almas ordered a retreat, and Bartholo shielded refugees. Kingdom of Rosa monarchs reeled, convinced Almas was too cautious for such aggression, until Almas apologized sincerely, and Raymond bitterly remarked God had abandoned them all, denouncing impulsive regency and Raymond's pampering. The king judged Almas for risking war despite saving refugees, though Almas felt genuine pity for the cornered monarch, demanding a holy trial over execution. The king forced Almas into a duel. Though Raymond urged refusal, Almas chose to face Rhaegar Dibel head-on rather than be branded a coward. Recalling their past arm wrestle, Almas suspected Rhaegar Dibel's blessing, but Bernard and Yuria noted matching divine gifts are rare, as the king approved the duel to crush House Dibel. Yuria outlined the lethal duel rules to Almas. Overseen by the high priest, victory demands killing the foe, forcing 2 faintings or surrender. Ancient tradition strictly forbade Almas from bringing long-range weapons to the arena, leaving him to choose his gear wisely or face public scorn. Accepting the terms without hesitation, Almas learned from the king that the fateful duel with Rhaegar Dibel would commence in exactly 1 week, sending him straight to Griffin for preparation. Grasping the gravity of the upcoming clash, Almas knew he needed a legendary blade built for combat, not display. Griffin reluctantly handed Almas his Damascus steel sword, warning him not to ruin it. Bernard doubted Rhaegar Dibel, who scoffed until realizing caution was wise. Mourning broke on the arena as Yuria conceded defeat in the preliminary terms, forfeiting lands and property as originally agreed. Facing someone wielding the exact same blessed sword technique terrified Almas, yet holding Griffin's dragon steel weapon flooded him with fierce confidence and extraordinary strength. Pinpointing the flaw instantly, Almas saw that Rhaegar Dibel depended entirely on raw blessed swordsmanship, with minimal actual combat discipline. Too many wasted motions gave Almas an easy opening, proving this opponent was far too weak to ever conquer King Fermi. Almas ended the battle swiftly before Rhaegar Dibel could beg for mercy or surrender. House Dibel surrendered all land and wealth to House Ash, sending a formal apology to the king. Almas confronted Rhaegar Dibel over his autocratic rule, hoping the defeat would force genuine change. Praised at the palace next day, Almas explained he spared Rhaegar Dibel to avoid becoming bloodthirsty. King Rosati noted, sparing Rhaegar Dibel prevented public hatred, despite the defeat. House Dibel fumed over the cowardly surrender. Meanwhile, Yuria and Almas watched fleeing nobles scatter. King Rosati defended the sacred duel surrender rules against Rhaegar Dibel, noting warriors face only victory or death. Raymond advised his son on governance and warfare, praising Rhaegar Dibel as a formidable fighter. Defeated by the king, Rhaegar Dibel lost all grounds to force his arranged marriage with Yuria. Yuria pressed King Rosati, who confirmed she would never marry Rhaegar Dibel or accept Almas under these terms. King Rosati planned Almas and their wedding to strengthen the kingdom against De Morgar, keeping Bernard as a key ally. Almas suggested forming a strategic alliance with the nomadic Alva kingdom east of Kingdom of Rosa. Raymond warned that direct clashes would fail, making German cavalry units of the Ash and Adelia society vital for defensive warfare. Securing war horses from the nomadic tribe remained the primary logistical hurdle. Almas Almas proposed trading with or hiring Alva mercenaries, though language barriers threatened negotiations. King Rosati summoned Ainz, who had prior trade experience with the Alva people, to share insights. Ainz explained that the isolated Alva horse riders numbered only about 1,000 in their territory. Alva warriors flattened their noses during childhood to appear more intimidating to enemies in battle. Ainz dismissed the harsh nose-flattening custom as a wasteful practice that needed to stop. Bartolo believed Alva riders would fear the Damagar conquest of South Rosa and agreed to serve as envoy. Almas sent Rosewood with trade goods like wine and salt. The Exus tribe returned wool and horses, forging a firm alliance sealed by a handshake. Trade flourished with mutual profit until a spy reported an enemy army mobilizing to strike during the harvest, prompting quiet preparations. Almas headed toward the Exus tribe through the Alva Mountains, riding his horse Sui under crisp skies to reinforce their growing alliance. Yuria warned Almas against leaning over the edge during the envoy assembly because the Exus tribe specifically requested her spiritual guidance. Banners fluttered as the excess party arrived, prompting Yuria to wave joyfully and inspired cheerful shouts from the excess riders. Muzio greeted Almas and Yuria warmly, dropping formal titles immediately to discuss trade and lasting alliances in a relaxed atmosphere. Muzio patted backs with casual force, leaving Almas wincing slightly before jokes cleared the air and bonded the group beyond simple diplomacy. Noticing Yuria and Almas with his gear, Muzio stared at the stirrup with intense curiosity and eagerly asked to learn how the clever invention worked. Almas chose openness over secrecy, exchanging wool insights and craftsmanship tips with Muzio to strengthen their mutual trust and knowledge. Yuria suggested Almas teach them farming basics, and the sunny fields provided a hopeful backdrop as they discussed crop cultivation needs. Sunlight, water, and rich soil drove crop growth. Almas explained to Muzio, noting that soil nutrition mattered just as much as feeding sheep for wool. Soil eventually exhausts its nutrients without rest. Almas explained, helping Muzio and Yuria understand why occasional fallow periods mattered. Forest soil and ash helped restore exhausted land. Almas noted with a playful smile, hinting at more alliance secrets waiting to be sealed. Muzio laughed at Almas being strategic, but Almas knew the chief despised farming as a disruptive threat to traditional cultural norms. Understanding the chief feared risk rather than war, Almas hoped clear benefits would win him over as they crossed the mountain path. Muzio barked orders for yurts at sunset, explaining their seasonal nomadic lifestyle mixing livestock with farming as camp came together fast. A rampaging dragon burst into view, panicking the scout. Almas touched his sword, ready for his first monster fight. Muzio desperately begged for help against the beast, prompting Almas to sigh and grip his powerful blade before joining the sudden fray. Heavy footsteps thudged like war drums as the dragon emerged from the shadows, shattering the evening peace and forcing everyone to brace. Exchanging a resolute glance, Almas and Muzio drew the dragon's focus with a small team. Almas readied his blade to bite back. Riding in silence, Almas tracked the beast's slow yet cunning pace beneath the twilight sky. Adrenaline surging, Almas taunted the beast. Muzio thundered alongside him with an axe. The dragon pursued Almas with vicious clarity, prompting him to signal Muzio for the next phase. Almas rode into the open alone, his blade clashing against the dragon's snout to lead it away. The beast crashed through earth and stone until Muzio struck hard, forcing it into chaos. Observing its predictable left side, Almas dodged the charge and slashed deep beneath its eye. Blood spurted as the beast flailed, and ropes from Muzio wrapped its legs for Almas to strike. The dragon leaped furiously, throwing a girl to the ground as Almas raced to distract it. Almas launched himself mid-air, driving his sword across the dragon's neck before hitting the ground. With a shaky breath, Almas drove his sword straight into the chest, collapsing the beast into dust, while Muzio raised a victorious fist. Walking the blood-spattered battlefield, Almas smiled weakly. Muzio clapped his heavy shoulder. Yuria rushed over gasping at the blood, but Almas brushed off her worry with a reassuring smile. Inside the warm yurt, Almas sat by the fire with wine. At the same time, Muzio shared food and wide smiles. Under flickering lanterns, Almas raised his cup toward Muzio amidst simple food and lingering dust. Muzio leaned in with curious eyes, asking Almas for the secret behind his uncanny uncanny accuracy. Almas described the divine wind spirit blessing that enhanced his senses to track invisible paths. Flicking his wrist, Almas recalled piercing a storm's howl as Muzio recognized the burden of magic. Extending his hand, Almas sought trust and alliance, which Muzio accepted with underlying gravity. Swirling his drink, Muzio asked about wartime pillaging, and Almas agreed, noting everything now depended on Princess Uria's healing. Rumors of royal tension hung heavy with 3 wives and a crown surrounded by deep suspicion. Discussing strength, Almas noticed quick subject changes whenever deeper magic entered the talk, noting caution rather than fear in their eyes. Yuria answered quietly that healing depended on unnatural sources and curses, leaving Almas wondering about the true reach of magic. Masked as illness, the magical curse bore a distinct signature, acting less like a simple attack and more like a message carved into life. Explaining with precision, Yuria noted the ancestral poison passed through heritage, deepening Almas's insight into Exus and its shadowed history. Yuria removed the slithering poison in a swift ritual, holding the jar calmly. Almas knew retaliation awaited the sender. Dinner brought acknowledged wounds, and Almas thanked Yuria, understanding her trust would reshape alliances faster than any blade. Talk shifted to Exus traditions and court battles, where Yuria had just won the first quiet victory against cold royal smiles. Night fell, and Yuria offered Almas a quiet place to stay, which he accepted to better understand the kingdom's fragile peace. Beneath the stars, Almas smiled, knowing a woman carried the kingdom's history as tomorrow brought crucial decisions. Standing by the dead dragon, Almas inspected the wounds. Beside him, Muzio silently contemplated what the kill meant for tribal politics. Noticing rare shinin ore in the hide, Almas eagerly considered reforging his Damascus blade with this valuable new treasure. Almas and Muzio agreed to forge weapons, but a breathless messenger soon arrived to summon them to Cura's social hall. Riding through grasslands, Almas listened to Muzio explain tribal customs. Their horses galloped toward distant mountains. Arriving before noon, Almas marveled at the large horses near the stable and prepared to select a steed for future travels. Amid hooves and firecrackers, a piercing-eyed black horse stepped forward to Almas, prompting Muzio to approve the spirited choice. Nuzzling Almas's hand, the horse won his quiet approval, and Muzio praised its instincts as Almas tightened his glove. Dismissing wolves as a minor threat compared to dragons, Almas and his group still prepared firecrackers around the settlement. Howls echoed from a distant ridge as Almas positioned his companions, recognizing these wolves as organized and intelligent scouts. Firecrackers cracked to scatter the trained wolves, but Muzio frowned darkly at Almas, realizing someone had deliberately sent them. Yuria stood before the capital introducing her lineage, and Almas bowed respectfully, knowing this meeting carried massive stakes. King Exus welcomed them inside the formal halls, his steady eyes measuring every word Almas offered about peace, war, and Demorgar and his expanding ambitions. King Exus weighed the threat of Demorgar. Almas proposed an alliance built on mutual strength and mettle. Yuria detailed the approaching enemy forces, prompting the king to seek a lasting guarantee for his family's future. King Exus requested an engagement between Almas and Yuria, sealing their alliance through a personal bond rather than a mere contract. Almas accepted the proposal to unify their tribes, though he remained alert to hidden political currents. King Exus demanded that his grandson train in Almas's homeland as a strict test of mutual honor and trust. Almas firmly shook the king's hand as Yuria quietly exhaled, knowing her future was now tied to this pact. The handshake sealed the alliance without parchment, transforming Yuria into a bridge between two sovereign nations. As the sun dipped behind the peaks, the alliance between Almas and Yuria took root in shared purpose. Rhaegar stormed through the palace gates with tense muscles, demanding to confront Bernard immediately. Spotting his brother in the crowd, Rhaegar shoved past terrified guards to unleash days of pent-up frustration, slamming Bernard against the wall. Earl demanded the truth about their mother's sudden illness without riddles. Rhaegar sputtered excuses until a deeper doubt took hold, causing him to stagger back from his brother. Rhaegar traced Bernard's cowardly fear to a hidden palace faction sowing discord in the shadows, while Earl swore to rip them out. Infiltrating the records chamber by morning, Earl uncovered secret logs of royal favors and deep-seated corruption. Uncovering schemers among supposed loyalists, Earl Rhaegar shared the intelligence intelligence with Dora to assemble a quiet task force. Dora vetted candidates for loyalty. Meanwhile, Earl rode out to seek trusted allies in neighboring villages. An agent from the Dory house blocked the path in town, but Earl hid his blade of purpose behind a diplomatic smile. The agent backed away, and Earl marched forward with a steeled heart to unite his people against paranoia. Returning to base camp, Earl found a warm stew waiting alongside Joseph and comrades growing uneasy with mounting tension. Over dinner, laughter eased the tension. Earl privately gauged Joseph and the warriors' resolve, knowing morale required a vision beyond mere survival. His youngest daughter tugged at his sleeve, softening his heart and proving this war was for her future and every child in the land. Standing beside Bernard under the starlight later that night, Earl found quiet understanding as they faced stakes far higher than ancient thrones. Dawn broke over the camp as Earl nodded to Dora, preparing to confront the Dory faction with strategy and truth rather than chaotic bloodshed. Villagers returned to bustling routines as leaders gathered quietly to sort plans, knowing each small decision would ripple deeply through every home. Updates circulated about who could thrive and who might struggle, shifting focus from raw numbers on a scroll to real people and daily needs. Arrivals brought questions of building or leaving, reminding leaders that townsfolk were neighbors and friends rather than lines in a ledger. Earl suggested training the willing and helping others resettle, keeping in mind that every single person carried distinct dreams and a personal history. Sharp morning winds accompanied final rounds of collecting names, knowing tomorrow's new arrivals would stretch the town's borders even wider. A month slipped past as green fields and repaired roofs welcomed a lighter mood, though Earl still shouted to Joseph, facing another early morning of heavy work. A gentle knock broke the quiet rhythm before Joseph paused, and Earl stepped lightly across the room, already guessing who waited outside in the morning chill. Standing with a stiff posture and a clipboard, Earl carried news significant enough to make Joseph blink twice and sit up straight. Earl mentioned Sarah, expressed interest through her noble family, leaving Joseph to wonder if the formal talk was a genuine offer or a political favor. Rhaegar paced the manor furiously as messengers brought rumors of shifting loyalties, sparking an unsettling mix of betrayal and urgent pressure. Demanding answers from aides, Rhaegar barked commands as Joseph's name sparked fresh agitation over why the Ash House drew such support. Fearing that sliding support would tip the balance, Rhaegar clung to rigid formality. Panic quietly threatened his legacy and standing. Calculating strategies behind a stern frown, Rhaegar watched the younger generation abandon old rules for freer, more modern promises. Older voices whispered in mansion corners about fading influence, but Rhaegar clenched his fists, determined to find one last move. Joseph reviewed fresh reports elsewhere, noting that Earl's updates confirmed safer streets and ongoing work, even if perfection remained distant. Genuine progress showed in relaxed conversations and untainted laughter, prompting Joseph to make a mental note to protect that hard-earned atmosphere. Lingering scars remained visible as memories of past suffering surfaced, eased by time, uniting survivors in quiet steadiness. Joseph weighed the risks ahead. Overextension risked ruin, whereas hesitation spelled defeat, forcing a careful balance. Rhaegar faced mounting doubts over his strength and loyalty, leaving Earl and Joseph to watch intently as the unfolding choices shifted the game. Precision timing replaced brute force as Joseph's smile deployed quiet whispers, moving every strategic piece toward the ultimate trap. Focused allies turned their gaze toward Bernard, relying not on violence, but on the quiet erosion of trust to force his hand. Urgent warnings arrived regarding a familiar shadow near Bernard's estate, carrying subtle implications of potential betrayal. Rhaegar fought his rising pride and instincts, refusing to believe Bernard could turn, though suspicion quietly took root within him. 3 tense days passed as ledgers shifted and letters were signed with heavy inevitability, turning local politics into a subtle war. Earl arrived at Bernard's estate bearing polished diplomacy and heavy pressure disguised as courteous alliance and security. Diplomatic words carried hidden pressure, offering Bernard a final chance to choose surrender before options vanished entirely. Bernard masked his rising tension behind polite indifference, recognizing Earl's generous offer as a cleverly sealed door. Public refusal failed to stop Earl's mission, leaving doubts and whispered loyalties to spread quietly among Bernard's servants. Servants vanished and posture shifted across the estate, leaving Bernhard facing a deep, water-like fracture in his foundation. Rhaegar demanded immediate proof and intervention upon hearing of the betrayal, tightening his iron grip on lingering trust. Rhaegar stood at the balcony watching his alliances erode, realizing survival demanded active measures against the advancing cold tide. Age weighed heavily on Bernhard, dimming his ambition and tempting him towards surrender as the physical signs of fatigue mounted. Rhaegar refused to let him yield, stepping in with fierce finality to prevent losing another crucial piece on the board. Final steps echoed quietly as Bernhard walked away without looking back, leaving onlookers frozen in respectful heavy silence. Peaceful stillness settled over Bernhard as his shallow breath faded, leaving behind a silent final nod for those keeping vigil. D. Morgan invaded Ash territory after shifting alliances, and deep betrayals fractured the political landscape. Panicking eaters rushed to gather, tapping Almas to spearhead the defense against Emergar's massive invasion. Stepping up to lead, Almas fiercely vowed to shield Ash lands and crush the enemy for his people. Yuria supported Almas warmly, remaining a reassuring presence in the tense hall despite staying behind. Almas trusted Yulia with the capital because she vowed to protect it, and he led the battle. Almas was informed that Domergar's army numbered approximately 25,000 soldiers, a major enemy force. Ash's force totaled only 13,000, with many houses refusing support and causing deep concern. Despite the odds and political betrayals, Almas remained optimistic and prepared to fight the invading army, marching right toward Fort Talia. The troops eyed the freshly upgraded stronghold anchoring their entire defense line. Almas instructed his troops to rest. Next, he briefed new soldiers about the fort's defenses and upgrades. Almas returned home and discussed with Tetra their slim chance of winning against 25,000 soldiers. They will sever enemy supplies while ruthlessly exploiting Domorgar's bitter feuds with neighboring nations. Just before the clash, Tetra hyped Almas up and backed him all the way, totally sure he would win. An urgent message arrived as enemy soldiers were spotted nearby, forcing Almas to act immediately. Almas and Tetra observed the vast Domorgar army preparing for invasion, confirming the daunting threat. The 7-day battle begins as Almas is entrusted as the true commander by Tetra's confident advice. De Morgan's army approaches steadily, preparing for confrontation as tension builds around the conflict. Tonino, a Domorgar officer, discusses battle confidence with Carlo, commander, and Domorgar's first prince. Tonino introduces himself as general, observing Carlo's leadership and the army's readiness in quiet reflection. Tonino criticizes Carlo's talent, but respects his ability to delegate and take responsibility effectively. Tonino believes conquering Adelnia is achievable by working together under Carlo's leadership and promises. Carlo details the plan to seize Ash territory first and pursue peace later, avoiding immediate war with the Kingdom of Rosa. The De Morgar army approaches Fort Telia, preparing siege tactics and a decisive encirclement upon arrival. Intelligence reports that the strongholds of Fort Telia are divided into 3 sections and garrisoned by 8,000 soldiers. Commanders decide to concentrate their forces on the northern gate, leaving the southern side lightly defended. Tonino sounds the alarm about dwindling rations and insists they lock down the supply line right this second. Ignoring the fort risks a pincer attack, meaning retreat routes must be secured for survival. Tonino suggests deploying slave soldiers first to test the enemy fighting power cautiously. From the western tower of Fort Telia, Almas and Ron spot the first wave of enemies approaching swiftly. The enemy forces carry logs and heavy wood, likely planning to fill the moat and breach defenses. Almas orders the archers to unleash a punishing volley of arrows at the advancing enemy lines. The arrows fly but have minimal effect as the attackers efficiently shield themselves with logs. Despite missed lethality, the enemy lack of heavy armor provides natural mobility against the impacts. Almas analyzes the enemy tactics. They discard armor to move faster, using logs as portable shields. Attackers rush toward the moat to avoid arrows. Almas urges the defenders to maintain pressure. Almas notices some enemies leap directly into the moat, exposing their sheer desperation and grim determination. The soldiers tie logs together underwater, hastily building a makeshift bridge to cross the barrier. Almas watches in disbelief as the enemy attempts to scale the stone fort using a shaky ladder. Almas shoots an attacker, attempting to scale the wall, defending the fortification with precision archery. Unarmed enemies cannot fight after climbing. So many fall or get easily defeated by the defenders. Facing catastrophic losses, the enemy retreats hastily back to safety and abandons the assault. Despite retreating, defenders debate whether to keep attacking or preserve their dwindling arrows and manpower. Tonino learns surviving slave soldiers return to inform the commanders about the failed assault. Tonino orders the execution of returned slaves and their families, punishing betrayal methodically. Archers swiftly execute captured slaves, signaling De Morgar's ruthless intolerance for defeat. Tonino announces the next wave, celebrating a newly constructed bridge across the defensive moat. Explosives instantly shatter the bridge, shocking De Morgar's army and ruining their siege plans. Commanders inspect the debris, questioning whether this devastating setback ruins Tonino's strategy. Tonino admits the delay, but insists preparations for the next assault on the fort continue despite losing progress. Siege towers rise as De Morgar's army prepares to launch an immediate full-scale assault. Fort Telia's strategic layout reveals assigned commanders stationed across each fortified defense tower. Defenders atop the central tower watch enemy slaves retreat, confirming their successful defense. Almas and Tetra inspect the towers, confirming Fort Telia remains structurally intact after the skirmish. Approaching siege towers signal the arrival of the enemy's true main army for battle. Enemy troops position heavy shields and ramps, closing the gap to breach Fortilia. Interlocking covers shield advancing soldiers, driving a coordinated attack against the fortress walls. Defenders unleash a volley of arrows targeting enemy infantry to halt their relentless advance. Archers hold the line across the moat, commanding troops to ignore towers and focus fire. Colossal siege towers close in on Fort Telia, packed with troops ready to storm the ramparts. Tower-mounted archers unleash sudden gunfire, forcing stunned defenders to scramble for cover. Defenders brace themselves as armored enemy soldiers rush forward with shields toward the walls. Almas unveils newly built catapults ready to unleash a counterattack designed to scatter enemy forces. Crewmen trigger the loaded catapult, launching a fresh phase of defensive combat inside the fort. Heavy stone arcs toward the siege tower, intended to shatter the relentless enemy advance instantly. Detonation tears through the structure, exposing concealed black powder packed for maximum destruction. Thick plating absorbs the blast, keeping the massive siege tower standing despite the severe explosion. Scouts inspect the damaged fort frame, realizing dark voodoo rituals shield the enemy engines from harm. Layered wet leather and treated metal reinforced with sorcery render the advancing towers explosion-proof. Creeping closer to the ramparts, the armored tower prompts defenders to brace for an arrow storm. Elite troops fill the ranks inside, replacing the poorly equipped slave levies seen in earlier clashes. Tetra spots the enemy commander directing the coordinated assault with disciplined tactical precision from afar. Bowmen draw their strings tight against the commander, seeking to snap the enemy chain of command. Loose arrows fly toward leadership targets, designed to fracture command cohesion and blunt the ongoing assault. Unstoppable momentum carries the towering siege engines forward against Fortella, despite desperate efforts to halt them. Clashing steel echoes across the ramparts as defenders shriek warnings to stop an enemy boarding party. Scalers swarm the upper platform, drawing blades for close-quarters bloodshed to capture the fortress wall. Ron carves through the borders on the platform, sweeping enemies aside with brutal, decisive strikes. Enraged archers loose a volley from below, trying to dislodge the defender holding the tower edge. Swift blade work by Ron sends attackers tumbling from the timber platform, securing the vital wall sector once more. Shouting tactical orders, Ron rallies defenders to lock down every narrow bottleneck against incoming infiltration attempts. Whistling arrows fill the air as Ron steadies his stance to catch incoming projectiles through the chaos. Captain Ron refocuses, standing firm beside Joseph to defend their massive siege tower. Joseph leaps into the fray, holding the line as Captain Ron issues tactical orders. Spectators watch their coordination, morale rising as the defenders repel incoming attacks. Observers declare Captain Ron and Joseph unmatched swordsmen, certain no breach will succeed. Panic spreads among other troops as opposing siege towers close in on the high stone walls. Enemy forces push forward aggressively, shattering defenses with brutal shield walls and strikes. strikes. Officers order defenders to form a solid barricade, surrounding incoming attackers with archers. Defenders stagger under relentless assaults as ladders and siege engines breach the ramparts. Alarms blare as watercraft arrive below, signaling a secondary enemy flanking strategy. Enemy troops utilize boats as floating platforms, driving footholds into the fortress walls. Shock ripples through defenders, witnessing coordinated scaling as negligent officers drink. An attacker flies off the ledge, yet defenders fear the main strike targets the western tower. Officers debate enemy tactics, concluding that veteran fighters adequately guard the eastern tower. Preparations start for a devastating new siege weapon devised by Almas to shatter the assault. Officers signal to discharge the device, aiming to strike simultaneously and terrify the enemy. The newly crafted weapon unleashes a blast, stunning defenders with its raw destruction. The heavy projectile strikes the enemy siege tower, triggering massive explosive blasts. Roaring flames engulf the ramparts, spreading terror through the attacking ranks below. Defenders ready their next offensive, focusing entirely on decimating the remaining siege towers. The commanding officer orders the siege engines burned, escalating the brutal fortress battle. Flames consume the siege tower as oil and fire bypass black powder resistance. Watching the burning siege tower, defenders note oil succeeds where powder failed. Tetra arrives on the battle line, joining the defense as a reinforcement mage. Blasting a magical fireball toward the foe, Tetra asserts her offensive role. Shocked soldiers stare at Tetra, momentarily suspecting a dark voodoo ritual. Tetra details the weapon, fusing black powder and oil with magic power ignition. Massive fuel demands and explosion risks threaten the circle if magic halts. Roaring flames shatter the enemy siege tower, breaking their tactical momentum. Cheers erupt as soldiers survive the first battle day with bolstered morale. Darkness blankets the enemy camp, where commanders weigh their heavy losses. Surviving wounded recover from burns after leaping into the moat for safety. Enemy generals analyze the devastating impact of fire cannons on troop morale. Surrounded within the fortress walls, defenders plan a war of attrition. Almas reviews the wounded and deceased list, weighing the grim cost of holding the fortress. Optimism fills Ron, who highlights their lighter losses and tactical advantage. Commanders authorize an alcohol ration to lift spirits through the cold night. Oros commends Tetra and the troops, bringing brief relief to the command tent. Vigilance balances with rest as leaders set watch rotations for the drinking. Silence shatters abruptly when an alarm announces a nocturnal enemy raid. Ron rallies the group against the shadowed intruders through the murky night. Dark figures tread noiselessly without torches, slipping past the fortress perimeter to ambush sleepy defenders. Officers track how enemy battalions cloak their true numbers, manufacturing panic under a black sky. Navigating pitch-black corridors is treacherous, yet saboteurs aim to fracture morale before dawn breaks. Unseen assailants unleash a volley of arrows from the shadows, leaving garrison guards entirely exposed. Saboteurs crawl beneath broken siege debris to slip away, exposing their frantic withdrawal from the fray. Regaining their footing, garrison officers question the chaotic nighttime assault battering the ramparts. Assailants grind down the watch with psychological pressure and endless harassment through the midnight hours. Commanders map out responses, knowing any panicked reaction will invite an immediate enemy breakthrough. Forces divide to answer incoming raids and let half the garrison rotate back for vital rest. Constant psychological torment sabotages sleep schedules, denying soldiers the recovery time they desperately need. Dawn breaks with spirits surprisingly intact, priming troops for the brutal siege work ahead today. Strategic talks set a 2-week timetable for the fortress to crumble under relentless tactical pressure. Day 2 dawns, drawing a fired-up vanguard rallying behind Almas Ash to press the offensive. Tyria Fort wakes to Day 2 as soldiers battle crushing fatigue amid non-stop combat noise. Ron brushes off the constant distractions, locking eyes on the barrage despite his bone-deep exhaustion. Enemy archers lose their terrifying precision under counter-battery fire as Ron presses the advantage. Officers prime the flame cannon, betting that raw heat and devastation will break the deadlock. The flame cannon roars, devouring the wooden siege engine in a sudden vortex of searing terror. Ron hails the burning tower, blind to the fresh assault units massing for a secondary surge. Thermal weapons demand mandatory mandatory cooling pauses, keeping defenders hyper-focused on the next enemy wave. Ron rallies the troops aggressively as the garrison questions the strange enemy tactics unfolding. Boros advises conserving flame cannon ammunition because the enemy fire mixture resists standard flames. The defenders plan to use Tetra to overcome the strange enemy strategy and unknown threat. Tetra volunteers to remove the siege tower magical barrier by explaining a special talisman use. She casts Dispel magic, causing the protective barrier around the enemy tower to weaken quickly. With the siege tower completely exposed, Tetra unleashes a magical projectile that slams into it with devastating force. The tower collapses dramatically, shocking both sides and altering the ongoing siege battle dynamics. Defenders reflect on the sudden barrier loss and ask Tetra to lead the offensive push now. Enemy soldiers identify Tetra as the voodoo user and rush to capture her during the skirmish. Tetra retaliates swiftly, fighting off attackers with skill and proving her close combat proficiency. Defenders urge Tetra to retreat as the enemy traps her, escalating the fierce siege intensity. Soldiers form a defensive perimeter around Tetra, shielding her from further hazardous enemy attacks. Commanders discuss magic risks on the front line, emphasizing protecting Tetra at all costs now. The West Tower is under siege. Soldiers defend the walls as enemies assault using ladders. Tetra and Ron discuss the strange small siege weapon recently brought onto the active battlefield. The new siege weapon is a mobile battering ram, unlike conventional towers. They analyze the shift in enemy tactics, puzzled by the transition from standard towers. The enemy pushes the battering ram forward, preparing to breach the fort defenses significantly. Rushing forward, foes hurl rubble from shattered towers, choking the moat and building a makeshift bridge right across. The defenders worry about the battering ram advancing once the moat is bridged by rubble. Fire consumes the ram, yet superior defensive shields outperform the towering siege machines, shocking defenders. Slanted roof plates deflect incoming arrows, leaving a dense magical barrier to frustrate archers completely. Commanders target bridge builders directly, lacking any support from the absent voodoo practitioners. Enemy forces construct a makeshift moat bridge using wreckage from the smashed siege towers. Lulu reaches the front lines, eagerly volunteering to help execute the plan against the battering ram. She readies a spell to shatter the ram's protective shield, coordinating timing closely with Ron. Ron grips an explosive spear, waiting to strike soldiers crossing the newly formed debris bridge. Lulu begins chanting through sacred magic talismans, preparing to disrupt the advancing enemy vanguard. Lulu unleashes a potent dispel wave, targeting the foundational footings of the makeshift bridge. The blast pulverizes the bridge, sending wreckage and shattered battering ram parts tumbling down. Defenders cheer the broken ram, though they remain on high alert for incoming secondary threats. Additional battering rams rumble forward as enemy forces press the assault despite recent setbacks. Ron accepts command of the West Tower, gearing up for further explosive counter-offensive strikes. Ron rallies troops at the central tower, steeling everyone for a fierce and critical counterattack. A swift Hawk messenger arrives, confirming that the opening phase of their defensive plan succeeded. The Domorgar military camp sprawls across the valley, massing forces for a decisive upcoming battle. Tonino boasts that makeshift debris tactics successfully bypassed the defensive moat. Carlo praises Tonino's progress, expecting total victory once the western tower falls. Tonino chuckles darkly as a subordinate rushes in, urgently warning Carlo of unexpected trouble. News breaks that Dora's village on their supply route has fallen, threatening total logistical collapse. Tonino learns 3,000 Rosas cavalry captured Dora village, shocking the campsite leaders. Guarding the only interstate route, they cannot explain how such a massive force slipped past notice. Weighing alternatives, they realize the mountain range blocks travel, leaving the forest as the sole path. Carlo recalls rumors that Almas Ash, known as Griffin's son, might lead this enemy cavalry. Admitting weak patrols, Tonino recognizes the urgent need to counter surprise enemy movement in the forest. Generals and nobles debate urgently inside the tent as their army batters the fortress walls. Carlo announces Dora village has fallen, cutting off supplies and suggesting a temporary retreat. Furious nobles reject retreating, accusing Boris of treating the ongoing war with careless indifference. Boris explains their family fortune hinges on victory, emphasizing the critical value of their lands. Despite rising tension, Carlo calmly notes that retreating would jeopardize his own royal succession. Tolnino agrees with Barras against retreating, planning instead to dispatch troops and retake Dora village. Carlo explains the enemy holds only minor territory, giving Domorgar a distinct advantage. Reluctantly, the nobles agree that 4,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry can reclaim Dora village. Praising Barras, Carlo appoints him to command the mission aimed at recapturing Dora village. Assuming command of 5,000 soldiers, Barras vows to reclaim Dora village for Carlo's cause. The army plunges into Griffin's forest, pressing to exit before dark to dodge fatal ambushes. Soldiers rush through the trees, worried about Almas and comrades fighting deep behind enemy lines. The group discusses formidable Kingdom of Rosa cavalry units, combining the Ash family with Germanus warriors. Almas commands fierce, skilled cavalry, including Exodus tribal warriors fighting under their king. Raymond admits his rookie leadership status, joking about handing command over to the Exodus king. Darkness falls, and the troops hunt for a concealed campsite, keeping all fires strictly doused. Dawn breaks over the army, massing to raid a border hamlet and let the mounts recover. Inflicting total surprise, soldiers storm the hamlet streets in a lightning-fast mounted raid. Terror grips civilians as Morgar raiders shatter the local defenses with swift, crushing force. Stunned, the village chief hears that Rosa forces crushed the nearby Domorgar units. Begging for mercy, the villagers yield unconditionally and raise the Rosa's flag without a fight. Sparing the village from flames, Demorgar troops rely on supplies already stripped from Dora's village. Carlo grants the chief mercy, demanding cooperation and a peaceful submission to their banner. Systematically raiding settlements, Rosa's cavalry forces surrenders and flags before pushing deeper. Inside Dora's village, the captive chief warns the Domorgar soldiers of the surrender ultimatum. Realizing infantry cannot match enemy cavalry might, the defenders panic over the grim odds. Slamming the gates shut, defenders scramble to their battle stations to block the incoming cavalry. Swarming forward in a tight formation, Rosa's cavalry charges the settlement with mounted archers. High on the ramparts, defenders struggle against the deadly precision of horseback archers. Reinforcements pour in, raising panic as defenders fail to pick off the darting targets. Rosa's cavalry envelops the fortress with crushing numbers, preparing a coordinated arrow barrage. Raymond weighs the deadly trap of encirclement, knowing submission remains inevitable. Forcing a heavy ballista toward the ramparts, soldiers ready a direct assault on the defenses. Operators prime black powder rounds in the ballista, bracing for a wall-shattering strike. Raymond orders the ballista crew to unleash fire, launching the debut battle of the Rosas cavalry. The ballista bolt shatters the fortress gate into timber splinters, tearing a gaping breach instantly. Panic sweeps through the defenders as the barrier collapses, anticipating an immediate enemy invasion. King Rosati's Rosewood charges the cavalry through the broken threshold, roaring fiercely to overrun the stronghold. Steel meets steel in a brutal clash, as riders trample forward and defenders strike back in desperation. Rosy soldiers flood deeper into the keep, leaving utter chaos in their destructive wake. Stepping forward, the captain tries to block the advancing wave and hold the inner courtyard line. Raymond corners the captain with drawn steel, forcing a reluctant surrender as weapons hit the floor. Offering terms of surrender, Raymond highlights a calculated strategy focused on tactical mercy. Non-combatants and those who lay down arms will be spared, safeguarding their families from harm. Laying down their arms, the defenders watch Kingdom of Rosa troops vow to punish only true instigators. Rosie's forces march into Dora's village, auditing the final granary after seizing the area. Captain Raymond commands Virgil to torch the grain stores, denying vital provisions to the enemy. Fire consumes the wooden granaries, billowing black smoke as soldiers watch the blaze consume the food. Rosewood questions wasting provisions, but Raymond prioritizes rapid marching speed over excess baggage. Inside Garnet Mine City, Rune chafes at being left behind. His family fights on distant fronts. Venting his frustration, Rune yearns to unleash his light-speed slash against Almas. Rushing in, a frantic messenger reports King Rosati's Rosewood seized Dora's village and advances with 3,000 troops. Dismissing the warning with a laugh, Rune trusts his father's dispatches claiming Kingdom of Rosa forces are trapped trapped at Tyria. Visualizing the battlefield, Rune plots to crush Kingdom of Rosa to prove his tactical military genius. Rune relies on the Citadel's defenses to hold the position and dispatches calls for aid simultaneously. Cavalry from the Kingdom of Rosa appeared before Browse, overwhelming the defenders with an organized advance. The invading army demanded surrender, revealing insider knowledge about the thin garrison guarding Browse. Rune realized the enemy alliance had secured superior cavalry to launch a much faster assault than expected. Facing desperate odds, Rune counted fewer than 100 soldiers, rendering any defense completely impossible. Browse ultimately surrendered without resistance, swinging its massive gates open to Rusisi's surrounding forces. Victorious Rosy soldiers marched inside, Browse marveling at the abundance of garnet wealth after the easy win. Troops plundered spices, gold, and glass jewelry, stripping the newly captured streets bare. Virgil expressed gratitude toward Rosewood, dreaming of freedom as officers seized official documents. Meticulous logs of villages, leaders, and tax records proved far more valuable than physical loot. Recognizing administrative value, the Kingdom of Rosa decided to capture Rune alive as a political hostage. Rune initially refused captivity, boasting loudly about his widespread popularity among Browse citizens. Rhea threatened his family, forcing Rune to swallow his pride and agree to accompany them. Under cover of darkness, the victorious Kingdom of Rosa troops secured Browse to prepare for incoming counterattacks. Almas received word of the sudden Kingdom of Rosa victory and mobilized his allies to reinforce the fragile front lines. Dawn broke as Browse forces advanced toward Dora's village, discovering the enemy army had already departed. Panic gripped Browse commander upon realizing hostile forces threatened his territory and endangered his family. Abandoning the mission to retake Dora village, he wheeled all troops around to rush back toward Browse. Urgent dispatches reached the Domorgar army at Tyria fortress, carrying news that Browse had fallen. Shock rippled through the command tent, forcing Domorgar generals into an emergency strategy meeting. Heated debates erupted over retreating, reinforcing Browse, or pushing the siege with just 3,000 invaders. Carlos called an immediate retreat, leaving the Domorgar commanders stunned by his bold tactical choice. Regrouping now prevented total destruction, forcing the council to begin a reluctant withdrawal. Fearing his military reputation was ruined, another commander bitterly protested the ordered fallback. Messengers rushed to recall stray detachments and urgently requested fresh reserves from the capital. Donning steel for talks, Carlos watched Tolnino swear to shield their exposed flank. Knowing Almas had previously humiliated him in battle, Tolnino accepted the duty of guarding the retreat. Near Teria fortress, Tonino swore to safely escort Carlo through the hazardous withdrawal. Scouts spotted 8,000 advancing foes, rendering any direct assault far too dangerous. Tolnino deployed his flank guard to buy precious time for the main army's escape. Bracing behind heavy shields, soldiers watched enemy bombs arc through the sky. Explosions ripped across the field, shattering the defensive line and scattering men in panic. Praying silently to survive, terrified troops realized dodging the incoming barrage was their only hope. As enemy cavalry thundered toward them, Tolnino screamed at his scattered men to reform their ranks. Leaping forward with lethal intent, Almas led the cavalry charge, paralyzing Tolnino's soldiers with terror. Morgan's entire formation shattered instantly under the pressure, rendering Tonino's defense completely helpless. De Morgar's flank guard suffered catastrophic casualties, fleeing Tyria fortress as discipline completely disintegrated. From Teria fortress, scouts watched Domorgar's forces retreat, opening a perfect window for a counterstrike. Almas drove the enemy back exactly as planned, leaving their vulnerable supply lines exposed to total destruction. Commanders ordered the offensive to begin, warning everyone to avoid reckless overextension in the coming clash. Channeling years of defensive frustration into pure fury, the troops tightened their grips for the counterstrike. Almas delegated command, choosing to join the front lines alongside Sakura and his trusted horse. Stepping up right before the clash, Almas readied his mount, rallied his allies, and handed out battle assignments, basking in a massive edge. Their army locked eyes with the foes, totally ditching tricks to face them head-on. Commanders ordered black powder on ballistae, planning to shatter enemy formation before initiating the charge. With formations breaking, Ron led soldiers forward, urging them to follow slow and maintain offensive momentum. Panic erupted along Demorgar's flank as soldiers fled and leaders desperately tried holding defensive lines. Tolnino ordered a tactical withdrawal, reforming the right wing near the forest for better defense. The flank army prepared to sacrifice the left wing, buying crucial time for the main retreat. By the third day, Almas arrived at a border village where enemy survivors had gathered. Almas instructed Bartholomew to surround the village, noting its lack of supplies and defensive structures. As soldiers advanced, enemy archers launched an arrow volley, striking the forward troops unexpectedly. Desperate to dodge needless casualties, Almas thrust Ron to the vanguard and ordered him to spearhead the attack. Inside the village, unarmed civilians pleaded for mercy, claiming Demorgar's soldiers had already abandoned the area. Almas organized a search to treat injured soldiers and pursued the enemies who launched surprise arrow attacks, securing their spot tightly. Tolnino's crew calls it a day and settles down to camp through the night. The construction crew rushed in earlier gear and arrows to keep everyone stocked through sunrise. Tolnino's preparations included wooden barricades for defense, though ineffective against black powder weapons. Intelligence revealed the enemy barricading inside the second village, having prepared defenses ahead of Almas's arrival. Almas decided to avoid a night assault, choosing to camp until daylight to prevent losses. Smart planning and tight retreat tactics carried Tolnino's squad straight to Doris village without a scratch. Tolnino rejoined the main Demorgar army on the fourth day, welcomed back with relief and respect. Surviving with heavy losses, Tolnino was urged to appreciate the surviving soldiers. He immediately requested a situation report from his officers to assess the battlefield status. Reports revealed ruined defenses, burned provisions, and a reduced army of 15,000 troops. Lord Browse returned to Browse without answering orders, sparking uncertainty. King Exus and Demorgar sent a long-awaited reply to Tolnino regarding their urgent request. Tolnino received orders to hold for 3 days, despite fears their forces would collapse. Judging a direct enemy attack unlikely, he planned to wait for Browse's army. Both sides wondered anxiously whether reinforcements or enemy forces would strike first. Almas praised Sakura for enduring the campaign, then reunited with Boros and Tetra. Boros proposed capturing Dora's village, but Almas preferred waiting for the army. Almas let the troops rest and celebrate, boosting morale after exhausting battles. Inside Browse, Raymond confronted Rune, using family leverage in tense negotiations. Rune refused surrender, forcing Raymond to prepare for an immediate combat engagement. Raymond rallied his soldiers, ordering them to ready themselves against the general. Enemy cavalry charged unexpectedly before the engagement, forcing Browse to react fast. Lord Browse ordered his own cavalry forward to intercept the anticipated mounted charge. Muzio welcomed the frontal clash, confident in exploiting Browse's advancing horsemen. Muzio revealed his cavalry were skilled archers enhanced by wind spirit blessings. His archers struck first, shattering Lord Browse's formation and causing heavy casualties. Feigning retreat, Muzio pulled back his forces, laying a deadly trap for the pursuing Browse. Browse ordered a withdrawal to keep their formation from shattering under relentless pressure. Enemy cavalry taunted the retreating soldiers, sparking fiery skirmishes and reckless retaliation. Convinced the enemy archers were vulnerable, Browse's cavalry charged to annihilate them. Muzio anticipated this aggression, knowing proximity would trigger pursuit despite the obvious trap. As the enemy closed the distance, Muzio signaled his waiting troops to counterattack and encircle them. Browse's forces realized too late that enemy cavalry had completely boxed them in on every side. Another hostile army struck from the flank, cinching the iron ring and sealing all escape routes. 3 distinct sectors braced for war, armies positioned strategically and watching each other like hawks. Vilger halted his squad on command, shielding Muzio safely within the tense 10th standoff. From the heights, watchers saw enemy cavalry buckle as Raymond dismantled their initial formation. Troops evaluated the Rosas cavalry threat, shoring up defenses and trusting Rhea and Vilgar. A flare hissed skyward, signaling Rosewood's squad to trigger the long-awaited battlefield maneuver. Rosewood spearheaded the cavalry charge, warriors roaring forward as defenders scrambled to guard their flanks. Vilgar carved through opposing soldiers, shouting fierce commands for Rhea to push the attack ahead. Rhea and Vilgar struck in sync, felling foes. soldiers. Rosewood watched them, maintaining a calm and silent smile. Rhea swung her weapon from horseback, instantly dropping an enemy amidst the violent melee. Rosewood's squad slammed into the disorganized enemy ranks, overwhelming their defense with crushing momentum. Cavalry crashed against shielded infantry, chaotic shockwaves erupting as soldiers braced for impact. Enemy lines fractured under the assault, horses trampling formations and leaving the battlefield in utter chaos. A sudden fall sent a horse tumbling as panicked soldiers screamed and the charge faltered. Bodies and horses flew through the air as Raymond and King Rosati army lost complete formation control. Rosewood analyzed the scene calmly, noting enemy inexperience, and kept his forces advancing. The enemy panicked as the kingdom of Rosa soldiers fled. Rosewood urged Vilgar forward to exploit the chaos. Rhea and the cavalry pursued as Brow's forces collapsed entirely under relentless pressure. Lord Browse panicked, realizing armored troops were surrounded and dispersed by multiple attacks. Enemy infantry fled in terror from cavalry, and Lord Browse raged at the cowardice. Lord Browse charged forward in desperate fury, vowing to fight despite total army disarray. A powerful knight blocked their advance, prompting Rosewood to order Rhea and Vilgar back. Lord Browse appeared to challenge Rosewood directly, threatening a lethal one-on-one duel. Rosewood met Lord Browse head-on, striking fiercely as their swords clashed amid battlefield chaos. With a decisive strike, Rosewood unseated Lord Browse and sent the general tumbling to earth. Lord Browse struggled against Rosewood's spear. Rosewood warned against reckless moves. Victory was declared on the fourth morning after Lord Browse and his son were captured alive. Raymond returned triumphantly with his detachment as cheering soldiers followed their leader. Raymond credited Rosewood and Muzio humbly, receiving heartfelt praise from his son for success. Almas checked the captured loot and prisoners, confirming the entire Browse family was secured. Lord Browse remained defiant despite capture, warning that his brother and son would avenge him. Almas anticipated the final battle, assessing enemy capacity with remaining family under control. In the Domorger camp, desertions increased as Almas' forces prepared for the final engagement. Tolnino stepped into the strategy meeting, knowing their worsening situation demanded urgent choices. Recalling past retreats, he acknowledged Carlo's prior orders had rescued their forces from ruin. Carlo faced the gathered commanders inside the War Council, preparing them for the impending clash. Tolonino joined the waiting faction members, aware political rifts threatened unity against enemies. Scouts confirmed 15,000 friendly troops remained against 13,000 opposing soldiers. Carlo challenged the Silent Room to produce workable tactics against Rossi's advancing forces. Heavy silence blanketed the commanders, because mere hope offered no defense against defeat. Faced with rising casualties, Carlo suggested surrender to prevent total military annihilation. The council yielded to reality, conceding no plan could overcome Rossi's relentless pressure. Almas accepted the truce delivered by the Domorgar army messenger without resistance. Negotiations began on the fourth night near Doris village, inside Rossi's occupied territory. Almas prepared to negotiate with absolute firmness against a powerful royal opponent. Carlo entered the tent with formal precision, finding Almas waiting across the conference table. Both leaders exchanged measured greetings, recognizing the gravity of settling regional hostilities. Carlo proposed a 12-month truce to buy stability without abandoning southern expansion goals. Almas accepted the terms, knowing prolonged sieges against fortified positions brought no gain. Carlo then offered the complete surrender of Brow's territory as war reparations. Almas reeled at the proposal, yet understood the sheer impracticality of holding that region. He restricted the demand to western Browse. Instead of surplus land, he requested master blacksmiths. Carlo accepted the adjustment, prioritizing skilled manpower and crucial knowledge over unmanageable territory. Almas proposed ransoming captured Brow's family members for financial gain, benefiting both kingdoms. Finally, Almas requested Carlo remain in his kingdom until a formal agreement was signed. stunning Carlo with sharp strategy and clever bargaining. Almas delivers his pitch with total confidence. Carlo acknowledged Almas' cunning, yet Almas humbly noted his position as future king candidate. The meeting ended, and Almas's allies celebrated the truce as a major victory. Almas vowed to win the throne and secure Uria, prioritizing family safety above all. Aiming to shield his comrades and homeless kids, he fights to forge a unified empire under his ultimate control. Sensing an all-out civil war brewing, Carlo scrambled to secure backing from every single noble, Bell included. Crushing House Dibel's faction was possible, but the cost would devastate the kingdom and invite invasion. Almas realized victory required minimizing casualties to protect the weakened kingdom from foreign opportunists. The recent triumph over Domorgar gave Almas the means and justification to strike first. Without delay, Kingdom of Rose's forces returned home, preparing for the looming internal conflict against Abel. After days of relentless marching, the troops returned to Ash territory, greeted warmly by awaiting villagers. Despite exhaustion, Almas urged urgency, knowing their mission still demanded swift action against looming threats. He assigned 1,000 soldiers to guard the settlement. This guaranteed safety throughout the ongoing campaign. Meeting with Muzio, Almas discussed whether returning home now was wiser than lingering longer. Muzio hinted at a secret, promising to reveal something intriguing if they stayed longer. The army marched through Ash territory, traveling without pause until they reached Rose's Rosewood capital the next day. Crowds filled the streets, cheering loudly, surpassing even the celebrations after their previous victory against King Fermi. Their triumph over a stronger foe elevated Almas's fame, drawing fervent admiration from the Kingdom of Rose's citizens. Public backing mattered, so Almas ordered his soldiers to showcase their combat prowess openly. Deeper inside Roses's castle, commanders issued precise directives for upcoming operations. Officials showered Almas with praise for crushing Domorgar forces during the recent siege. Guards brushed past eager allies, insisting Almas hurry to the monarch without delay. Walking through Rosa's corridors, Almas ignored cynical political gossip from passing nobles. Royal aides welcomed Almas warmly as he reached the heavy doors of the throne room. Courtiers parted in dead silence as Almas stepped down the center of the grand hall. Standing close by, companions watched the tense political confrontation unfold before them. King Rosati commended Almas, prompting the hero to claim both Uria and the crown. Gasps echoed across the hall at his brazen demand, though Uria waited silently. King Rosati surrendered the crown, offered Uria's hand, and revealed an unexpected bonus. Almas and Uria rushed together across the hall, hands outstretched in pure triumph. "I'll pull Uria into his arms." Almas kissed her deeply before the stunned assembly. Whispering fierce vows never to let go, Almas received Uria's immediate acceptance. Crown resting on his head, Almas hoisted the royal staff as citizens roared in acclaim. Striding beside Uria, Almas led the procession past crowds cheering for their new king. Raising a hand, Almas quieted the cheers, warning that the war remained unfinished. Declaring hidden traitors still lurked, Almas ordered Prince Carlo dragged into the open. Carlo knelt on the stone floor, reciting a damning list of corrupt high-ranking nobles. Prince Carlo exposed House Dibel as the mastermind, sealing every traitor's doom. Shock rippled through the court, sparking urgent debates on how to deal with the high-ranking suspected traitors. Almas decreed immediate execution, ordering every single identified traitor dragged away without hesitation. Guards swarmed the accused nobles, barking orders for complete surrender as iron cuffs locked into place. Chaos tore through the hall as soldiers slammed suspects to the stone, and Almas watched from above. Almas challenged the silent assembly, demanding to know if anyone dared question his crown or rule. Silence answered him, prompting Almas to name the eradication of all remaining traitors as his next goal. Commanders stepped forward, and Almas dispatched forces to slaughter the 9,000 enemy soldiers. Almas declared he would spearhead the final vanguard himself to crush Regardabel once and for all. Reaffirming pacts with trusted allies, Almas secured absolute loyalty across his newly established reign. Vowing to bleed together, the coalition braced, knowing the war for survival was far from finished. Almas weighed the heavy cost of his ruthless decree, accepting the ghosts that would haunt his sleep. 3 distinct divisions marched under Almas, heading straight into Dibel territory for total subjugation. Soldiers kicked kicked open heavy doors, ordering terrified citizens to freeze as boots secured the room. Royal decrees backed every arrest as troops cleared the stronghold before shifting toward their next target. Ebel's fort overflowed with desperate refugees, shivering in terror, wondering if their lords would abandon them. Bartolo fired up his troops, branding everyone inside the barricaded fort as traitors ripe for slaughter. The Kingdom of Rosa army surged toward Debel Mansion, catching the rattled defenders in a brutal, coordinated pincer. Ron led his soldiers in sealing every exit around the mansion, trapping the defenders in a lethal chokehold, executing Almas's strategy. The vanguard feigned hesitation. They blocked every escape route for Reincarnated. Rigger slammed his fist down, furiously demanding why Gilbert hoarded troops here instead of fighting. Regard denounced allies siding with Almas, calling them cowards who betrayed him for personal survival. Reincarnated blamed their disadvantage on lost forces, ordering Gilbert to gather the remaining available army. Gilbert accepted the task publicly, yet privately considered Rigger hopeless and beyond saving from defeat. An advisor urged mercifully appeasing Almas, but Gilbert insisted on regrouping his remaining soldiers. Advancing toward the city, Almas drove his main army forward, leaving peaceful resolution entirely impossible. All know one faction must fall, convinced that Reincarnated's survival would endanger House Ash. A woman urged Almas to remember that certain members of House Dibel remained entirely innocent. Almas assured her he would spare innocents, knowing that sparing all enemies risked a future rebellion. He planned severe punishment for those refusing to fight for the kingdom throughout the ongoing war. Exceptions would apply to nobles or relatives coerced into compliance under heavy political pressure. Almas confirmed mercy for non-combatants, but vowed zero forgiveness for anyone resisting his advancing army. Almas disclosed that half the testimony used to spare certain targeted individuals had been intentionally fabricated. A genuine letter plotting rebellion existed, though authorities mostly ignored its actual evidentiary strength. Almas claimed his chosen strategy would minimize casualties and ensure the kingdom remained fully secure. Breaking at dawn, Almas arrived as massive forces gathered near the tense, looming battlefield. Facing assembled soldiers and loyal allies, Almas prepared to execute his planned decisive strategy. Ron reported surrounding the area and successfully trapping Reincarnated's faction members inside their homes. Almas ordered the army to advance toward the Grand Mansion, confident in their overwhelming numerical advantage. Charging forward, the troops halted instantly when sudden commotion erupted before the fortified mansion gates. Defenders unexpectedly swung open the gates, generating instant confusion among Almas and his observing forces. Soldiers carrying white flags marched out to surrender Rigger as Almas furiously branded Gilbert a traitor. Rhaegar was dragged forward as a captive, his forces capitulating instantly without striking a single blow. Gilbert approached Almas, renouncing allegiance to Rhaegar and offering fealty despite their shared bloodline. Almas verified Gilbert's identity and challenged his motives, ignoring Rigger's furious protests from bondage. Gilbert swore loyalty to King Rosati, citing past meetings and a deep sense of royal recognition. Almas abruptly ordered Ron to arrest Gilbert, leaving the man stunned and demanding an immediate reason. Ron listed off Gilbert's extensive crimes under Rhaegar, brushing aside his sudden claims of loyalty to Almas. Almas told Gilbert to rise to his feet, but Gilbert kept whining that none of it was his fault. Rhaegar told Almas they crossed paths under dark omens, insisting he never truly harbored any hatred. Almas condemned Rhaegar to execution, declaring their bitter rivalry and clash over Uria must finally end. Rhaegar bowed low, begging frantically for mercy, but Almas let out a heavy sigh to weigh the plea. Almas ordered Rhaegar bound and thrown in a cell, telling him to pray solely for his family's safety. Uria confronted the imprisoned Rhaegar face to face, closing the final chapter against the Dibel faction. Abdomus invited Uria to travel back with him, but Tetra stepped in to correct his slip of the tongue. The trio resolved to return home side by side, sharing a collective breath of relief after the war. Spontaneous laughter echoed from the crowd to halt their exit, forcing Almas and Tetra to scan the area. Uria caught the mocking voices overhead, realizing the foreign tongue matched their own via magical translation. Almas warned the group of an incoming threat, urging everyone to keep their weapons ready for combat. Rigor took a sudden hit out of nowhere, coughing up a violent spray of blood in a brutal strike. strike. Panic surged as Yuria tried to process the lethal chaos unfolding with terrifying speed around them. Sei-mei documented the entire 7-day war in historical records as an attending officer. Reincarnated died from a rare disease causing bleeding in body holes, ending the war. Returning to Rosite Palace, Almas stood before the crowd and declared his succession. Despite the announcement, he clarified that unmet conditions delayed his formal coronation. Tradition denied him kingship without divine blessings and purging rituals with Yuria. Preparations for the marriage and ceremony continued. Almas awaited true kingship. Nobles gathered for greetings as Almas juggled duties, wondering why Rosichi drew eyes. Almas proved his strength against rising threats, drawing attention from foreign realms. Delegates arrived as Almas assigned Boros tasks before more royal guests entered. Exhaustion weighed on Almas, yet he received guests and planned future meetings. Swiftly pulling up to greet the fresh Rosichi ruler, King Exius and his queen rolled in with warm welcomes. Recognizing Almos, Exius praised their alliance and requested renewed wartime ties. Word reached them that Rossi, a vast northern kingdom, dispatched a convoy to Rosichi. Almas granted entry to the informal emissary without delay despite protocol. A mysterious woman led the envoy of the Kingdom of Rosa, offering a polished greeting to Almas in the hall. Her poised presence rattled Almas, leaving a sharp impression beyond diplomacy. Summoned soon after, Almas approached his long-awaited marriage and formal coronation. Almas and Yuria reunited joyfully, their faces warm before the sacred rites. Draped in white, Yuria radiated elegance, drawing open praise from Almas. Clasping hands, Almas and Yuria stepped forward together before the crowded hall. Surrounded by loved ones and nobles, Almas and Yuria received warm greetings as the ceremony began. Almas stepped up to the altar beside Yuria, ready to finalize their royal union. Tetra officiated the ceremony, chosen for her high rank and close personal connection. With solemn words, Tetra asked them to vow mutual support through every circumstance. The ceremony continued as Almas prepared the sacred ring, invoking the gods as witnesses. Blessings echoed through the hall, invoking divine protection and longevity for their marriage. The ritual culminated in an oath kiss, placing the final seal upon their union. Moved to tears, Yuria embraced Almas tightly, both vowing to remain side by side forever. As their kiss sealed the wedding, the crowd erupted in cheers beneath the sacred hall. Although legally married, Almas and Yuria acknowledged one final duty before resting. Almas asked others to look away, nervously preparing for the final public ritual. The audience watched silently as priests lit torches for Almas and his royal enthronement. Masked performers reenacted an ancient king's beheading, recalling an old invasion. Spectators remained confused until Ainz explained the custom rooted in royal history. The masked figure symbolized invaders, honoring the first king's vengeful rise. Almas stepped in dramatically to strike down the invader, reenacting past triumphs. Almas knelt as the ceremony concluded, symbolizing Rositi's rebirth through unified memory in the Kingdom of Rosa. Almas stood proudly before the people and gods, claiming his succession as the 2-0th king. Following the ceremony, Almas thanked his companions upon accepting the throne. Yuria celebrated the moment, but Almas reminded everyone their real duties had just begun. Chaos tore through the hall as a massive beast lunged from behind Almas. Total panic gripped the crowd when a slaughtered deer crashed down the aisle. Griffin arrived out of nowhere, presenting that carcass as a coronation gift. Landing squarely in the square, the legendary beast stunned every onlooker. Whispers confirmed Almas right there as Griffin stepped into the spotlight. Questioning human bonds, Griffin acknowledged Almas as the true central figure. Before taking flight, Griffin praised Almas and told allies to guide him. Spotting a cloaked woman, Griffin recognized Ethel's wife from 5 centuries past. Shock rippled across the room as onlookers processed her 500-year age. Identified as Milan, she served as Rosal's prime minister and founded voodoo. Despite her youthful look, she once assassinated the invading conqueror Ethel. Accepting parting wine, Griffin invited the group to visit the deep forests. Almas watched him leave. Meanwhile, teammates embraced fatherly warmth and cleaned up. Doubt crept into Almas until King Rosati stepped forward to offer reassurance. Over dinner, Almas asked if King Rosati regretted the purge, freezing the room. Defending necessary evils, King Rosati still viewed Almas as painful painfully soft. Total purges eliminate risks, cited King Rosati, pointing to Fermi and Tetra. Refusing that dark logic, Almas vowed to unite the entire continent in peace. Recognizing a shifting era, King Razati accepted that his own rule was ending. Mid-sentence, King Rosati clutched his failing chest and collapsed to the floor. King Rosati lost consciousness with a cry, and panicked, attendants rushed to help the fallen monarch. King Rosati later awakened in bed, whereas Almas and Yuria stood shocked by his miraculous return. He described waking in a flower field, spotting a distant figure across the river before reviving. King Rosati saw his late wife in a vision, and she urged him to return because his work was unfinished. Fully revived, King Rosati spent his final years awaiting the birth of his first grandchild. Almas brought up the succession, and Yuria replied playfully, hinting at conceiving their child right away. Almas raised concerns about Rigor dying, but Yuria explained that magical backlash caused it. Yuria displayed her raw power, letting him witness the exact moment, which was clear yet uncontrollable. Fairies granted her blessing, she explained, but its hidden effects turned clear only now. She remembered hearing a mysterious voice during the blessing, remaining unsure if it meant grave danger. Public recognition grew the blessing's burden, and losing support triggered severe physical deterioration. Almas wondered about other hidden effects, but Yuri admitted her own limitations prevented detection. Reflecting on his war training, Almas believed his true qualifications stemmed from hard-earned growth. Almas admitted his brutal past of purging and killing brought zero remorse, deeply unsettling his mind. He questioned whether the blessing triggered these cold emotions and actively influenced his decisions. Almas considered if gaining more followers strengthened that strange blessing to shape behavior subconsciously. Yuria perceived the underlying truth, recognizing the effect instantly broke its seal. Acknowledging the blessing's manipulation, they both realized resisting or altering its nature proved impossible. Almas reflected that blessings manipulate thoughts, turning even unintended wishes into deadly outcomes. Defying all expectations, Almas vowed to protect lives even if others demanded a total purge. Almas reminded Yuria that his allies also prioritized saving others equally. Almas stood confident, convinced his vision matched his people's path. Deciding his next move, Almas sought loyal retainers reflecting his ideals. Almas demanded they focus purely on the atmosphere, sidelining everything else. Yuria welcomed his advance warmly, asking him to proceed with gentle care. Trust blossomed after Almas and Yuria spent their first night together. Spotting the signs of their union, onlookers chose to respect their privacy. Allied cavalry thundered westward across open plains during Day 5 of the war. Insectoid scouts kept commanders updated on Dalmorgar's rapidly collapsing resistance. Melon's group tracked enemy movements via flying beasts past Adelina's northern border. With Domorgar defeated in the north, generals debated invading through compromised borders after northern forces collapsed completely. Fearing civil war following Terria's fall, they chose careful surveillance of Dalmorgar over attacks. Wrapped in mystery, Milan reminded them she served the kingdom's founding king. Parting ways with the royalty, Melon departed quietly to pursue personal research. Soldiers whispered in absolute awe about youthful Milan serving unaged for centuries. Reaching her dwelling, Melon triggered the hidden mechanism exposing underground stairs. Settling into her grand sanctuary, Melon prepared tea for solitary arcane studies. Pouring tea, she noted her breakthrough was 90% complete. Decades of dedicated effort yielded her ultimate blessing of partial immortality. Her body regenerated rapidly, staying pristine though absolute destruction remained fatal. Centuries of relentless burden wore heavily on Milan, forcing a rare admission of deep regret after 500 years. Driven by ambition, she pursued arcane power to defy the gods above. Melon questioned whether endless life truly granted peace or forged a far more dangerous curse. Dread of an eternal nightmare hardened her resolve never to perish like Ethel ever again. Resurrecting Ethel and reclaiming their lost homeland became the sole objective driving her forward. Dismissing Almas as no threat to Rosal, Melon noted their strangely familiar shared origins. Scornful of cowards fearing taboo research, Melon mocked ordinary limits with utter confidence. Sipping tea in silent contemplation, Melon plotted her next strategic moves with ruthless precision. Far away in the sanctuary, Almas unwound inside beside a remote mountain hot spring. Surrounding steam and sulfuric water offered Almas a rare moment of pure physical relief. Enjoying the soothing warmth after their exhausting journey, two companions bathed nearby. Absolute comfort made the mineral springs instantly addictive, inspiring dreams of frequent returns. Discussion turned to local customs and how long travel distances kept Adeline citizens from bathing. Yuria suggested building accessible hot springs, though Almas hesitated over logistical costs. Reminding Almas of his royal status and rising tax revenues, companions urged him to indulge. Fears of empowering rival factions like House Dybel made Almas wary of distributing land. Slow centralization demanded forceful executive measures and long-term enforcement to succeed. Echoing her father's wisdom, Yuria pressed Almas regarding his true vision for unifying Adelinia. Recalling past royal wishes, Almas explained that true unification required growing national strength. Gradual reforms aimed to tax all territories and systematically dismantle entrenched noble dominance. Spreading power among common folk would dilute the iron grip of the arrogant nobility. Circulation of coin and civic order would spark a natural hunger for fundamental rights. Prosperity and empowerment would inevitably awaken genuine political awareness everywhere. Almas argued that shared currency and civic duty would slowly unify the fractured realm. Breaking the tension, a cheerful girl reminded everyone that this trip was meant for rest. Almas smiled at the reminder, then steered the talk toward choosing the next true ruler. Tetra nominated Urias' child for the throne, and the group embraced her logic instantly. Unwinding in the warm spring waters, the trio mapped out a peaceful future for the realm. Boros arrived with urgent steps, handing Almas a sealed letter from King Exus himself. The royal missive announced a wedding in Exus, confirming deep ties to Muzio. Though the purge worked, lingering bitterness remained, so Almas chose to trust his allies. Diplomacy outweighed domestic crackdowns, making foreign alliances his primary mission now. Studying the tactical map, Almas noted 4 kingdoms bordering retail, with Exus already allied. Seimei expanding power alarmed the south, with Burveld and Ebiol posing immediate threats. Ignorance about Almas bred panic abroad, threatening to isolate Ritsai Shu entirely. Almas scheduled a diplomatic mission to Exa to cement loyalty and strategic intent. Since King Exus sent envoys first, Almas would now return the gesture in person. Raymond accompanied Almas across the Almas Range, bound by mutual respect and ambition. Dropping formal titles at Raymond's request, Almas assigned Rose to guard Yuria vigilantly. Stepping into the windy capital of Exus, Almas faced a landscape sparse of dense forests. Inside the castle, Almas reminded himself to avoid careless promises during negotiations with King Exus. Almas formally greeted King Exus and Muzio. Trust came easier with Muzio's familiar presence. King Exus welcomed the profit-sharing terms. He sensed opportunity yet remained cautious about economic balance. Prince Matil formally greeted Almas as the royal family members introduced themselves one by one. Matil confirmed his mother recovered thanks to Yuria, and Almas expressed genuine relief at the news. He suspected Prince Lados of a curse link, possibly originating from rivalry within the consort's bloodline. Muzio joyfully welcomed Almas. Lados hesitated, clearly uncomfortable watching Muzio receive the first greeting. Almas noticed Lados glaring at Muzio, deepening suspicions that Lados might be connected to the curse. Muzio introduced his bride, Raquila, to Almas, presenting her with evident pride and confidence. Raquila apologized for her prior absence, explaining that her previous condition prevented a formal introduction. Almas complimented her beauty, stirring mild jealousy from his companion Tetra, who stood watching nearby. Tetra scolded Almas for his comment, and Muzio quickly redirected the topic towards ceremony preparations. Muzio concluded the introduction swiftly, exiting with Raquila alongside Almas before questions continued. Almas finally greeted Prince Lados. Lados responded politely yet distantly, maintaining a blank expression throughout. Lados excused himself quickly, leaving Almas and Tetra to sense his detachment and label him mysterious. The wedding's first day began as Muzio welcomed Almas warmly, displaying a negotiation ease his father lacked. A large feast followed where guests, including Almas and Tetra, enjoyed generous servings of grilled lamb. On the second day, Muzio thanked Ruzayo, noting their alliance had lasted since the initial negotiations. The wedding ceremony formally began with Rakula sitting beside Musayo as guests gathered in silence. Almas learned this wasn't the real ceremony because true vows occurred only on the finale. Ricio wine flows to Muzio as a toast of peace and prosperity for him and Rakila. Heartfelt wishes come from Almas on the final day until Tetra draws his gaze elsewhere. Yuria explains the sacred sheep sacrifice performed for ancestral spirits and gods. Muzio and Rakila seal their vows before the tribe to conclude the wedding ceremony. Yuria prepares to visit the third consort, whereas Almas considers staying another day. Peace settles over the concluded wedding as Almas pivots back to state diplomacy. Diplomatic talks open with Almas and Raymond facing King Exus and Prince Maddle. Past treaties are reaffirmed when Almas and Exus shake hands to cement political trust. King Almas and Raymond reach the Exist capital under the guidance of a local scout. The Alliance Summit opens with Almas seeking smooth diplomacy free from conflict. Introductions finish as Almas, Matil, and the Exus leader commence formal negotiations. Grateful for past cavalry support, Almas praises the decisive strength of Exus warriors. Wool and horses enter the trade proposal. Exus counters this with rare beast materials. Wheat and surplus wine top the Exus request list before Almas asks what else they need. Heavy demands for iron tools arrive from Exus, surprising everyone at the table. Exus targets iron for farming and defense. Almas notes the scarcity back in Rosa. Almas offers skilled blacksmiths instead of raw iron to protect regional resources. Exus accepts the knowledge exchange and starts training in iron processing. The Exus leader shifts the agenda to ask Almas about a mysterious artifact. Matil presents a pink gemstone, and Almas examines it with granted permission. Almas recognizes the crystal as rock salt, and Matil notes it originates from underground deposits in Exus. Exus exports this rock salt, meaning a sudden price drop could destabilize Raziz's domestic economy. Lacking proper mining technology, the local chieftain asks Almas for expert help in extraction. Exus offers cheap salt, whereas Almas calculates potential resale margins across the Curitian trade route. Hostile tribes block direct trade with the Curitians, forcing Exus to request military escorts from Razisa, admitting a lack of commercial experience. Matil trusts Razisa to handle foreign exchange reliably. Almas notes the tribe asks only for basic wheat and wine, avoiding any economically disruptive luxuries. Agreeing to the terms, Almas backs the initiative and immediately opens formal alliance discussions. Inside the consort's chamber, a magical sweep confirms no lingering traces of the curse remain. Attention turns to Rachel's impending marriage and whether past curses might still jeopardize her union. Yuria reveals her shared royal bloodline with Muzio, carrying heavy political and emotional weight. Melon uncovers the lineage links, reigniting fears of internal instability amid shifting power dynamics. Despite lingering unease, they confirm peaceful diplomatic ties keep the consort's tension manageable. The women note the second consort deliberately sidesteps conflict by peacefully surrendering her claim. As a respected warrior, her father also backs peace, rejecting power struggles over tribal leadership. Bypassing strict bloodline rules, he endorsed Prince Matil to preserve unity against lupus threats. Custom dictates the eldest inherits the throne, though the elder's true intentions remain shrouded. Prince Lados, once gentle, now turns cruel toward Matil and Muzio, breeding deep, quiet fear. Clutching Rachel's portrait alone in his room, Lados burns with bitter jealousy toward Muzio. He remembers being crowned heir apparent, though his sole wish had always been to stay with Rachel. Shadows part as a cloaked woman steps into the room, leaving Lados trembling at her whisper. Whispering of power and Rachel, she fuels the darkest ambitions buried deep within Lados. Travelers complete their long journey as Almas and his companions arrive to a warm Rosito welcome. Reports from the Exos tribe confirm the alliance remains unshaken because Mitzville holds steady. Knowing tension lingers, Almas plans a minimal escort for his next visit, keeping Yuria behind. Assigning duties swiftly, Almas places Bartolo as guard. The others manage the capital. Stepping forward, Tetra insists on joining joining El Marcin to offer vital support when needed. Intelligence reveals King Abel amassed troops during the war, pointing toward hostile intent. Refusing to isolate his people, Almas prepares to demonstrate peace despite old betrayals. Banners flutter as the envoy crosses enemy borders into an oppressive, watchful silence. Mountain trails give way to vineyards as formal escorts approach with careful bows. Heavy palace doors swing open, ushering the delegation straight into the royal hall. Almas steps into the chamber as King Abel advances with an aura of silent authority. Pleasantries end quickly as both rulers retire to private chambers to discuss state affairs. King Abel expresses astonishment that Almas crushed the rebellion in such a brief time frame. Masking deep hostility beneath polite composure, Almas confronts Abel regarding past plots. Seeking to ease lingering tension, King Abel hosts a lavish banquet for the visiting delegation. Comparing agricultural yields, Almas and Abel realize a produce trade pact is unnecessary. With De Morgar neutralized, both leaders shift their primary focus toward internal growth. A firm handshake seals their parting, pledging lasting peace and mutual respect between nations. Privately, Abel admits uncertainty regarding Almas, sensing no immediate danger. Despite Almas seeming sincere, Abel remains wary, quietly prioritizing stability. Crossing Abel's border, Almas approaches Bivdil, anticipating potential threats. Unfamiliar streets reveal architecture surprisingly reminiscent of Rosisi to Almas. Advanced structures display clear Kuritian influence across Bivdil's distant city. Towering walls impress yet hint at excessive military spending over civil needs. Whispers confirm Bivdil's king hoards defenses, prompting Almas to tread carefully. King Bivdil greets Almas warmly, though heavily flanked by cautious guards. Tension hums beneath formal pleasantries as Almas maintains calculated distance. Bivdil flatters Rosisi, subtly probing Almas to gauge underlying influence. Discussing Kuritia, Bivdil masks sharp financial calculations behind politeness. Smiling calmly, Bivdil vows friendship. Beneath this facade, he conceals deeper political ambitions. Almas recognizes Bivdil controls Razi's trade, binding Kuritia's commerce tightly. Emphasizing stability, Almas hides his own strategic maneuvers behind diplomacy. Bivdil hints at strict neutrality, yet hopes Almas aids them against Kuritia. Vague threats and trade dependencies quietly pressure Almas toward future alliance. Feigning delight, Bivdil urges stronger ties. Almas preserves neutrality instead. Dining together, Almas avoids direct commitments, keeping future options open. Dreading a Rosisi shift, Bivdil's ministers conspire to rally allied backup. Petra and Alice awaken abruptly as an energetic Yuria bursts into the room. Without a moment to rest, Aururia violently yanks them from bed, rapid-firing a storm of questions about their diplomatic mission. Almas greets Yuria, gently dodging her questions, explaining the political outcome cannot yet be made public. With Damergard defeated, Almas shifts priorities to strengthening domestic stability instead of preparing for war. To solidify their future, Almas announces a major change that will move the nation capital immediately. Yuria voices concern about noble resistance, so Almas decides to consult Raymond before finalizing the move. He considers Raymond's sway with Rosici nobles, hoping his influence can ease internal opposition smoothly. Raymond arrives respectfully, and Almas immediately initiates discussion about relocating the capital to seek counsel. Raymond questions the bold decision implications, acknowledging its heavy political weight, yet remains calm and firm. Rather than hesitate, Almas shares deeper motives, projecting strength and justifying the cost for future influence. Almas outlines security flaws near Ramalia Forest, revealing how faith alone no longer ensures safety. Raymond acknowledges the capital western tilt, which left eastern borders exposed to possible enemy infiltration. He stresses centralization benefits, citing faster communication, mobility, and administrative access across territories. The capital cramped space and aging structures made future growth difficult, requiring complete reconstruction anyway. With clear reasoning, Almas gains Raymond full approval to expand and centralize the operational base. An influx of newcomers would swamp the capital, stretching resources thin and putting lives at risk during crises. Almas proposes solving future problems now because resources remain plentiful and available, avoiding the need to react later. Raymond pledges full cooperation to Almas, Almas, energizing the plan momentum with unified resolve and trust. Almas reveals a river junction as the proposed site, enabling efficient trade via water transportation. Combining food, water, and building resources, Almas endorses this location as ideal for founding anew. Listening to the proposal, Raymond raises concern about flooding he already anticipates as a major drawback. Tackling Rosichi's chronic floods, Almas proposed building infrastructure for agriculture and urban planning. Tight resources forced him to prioritize labor and food, confident it would boost the kingdom's economy. To secure workers, Almas asked Raymond to convince local nobles controlling most manpower sources. Raymond pushed for trustworthy leaders, suggesting Izmia and Kirishia for crop and defense assignments. Moving south meant abandoning the northern front, risking delayed responses to Demorgar's future aggression. Dismissing Demorgar for now, Almas considered threats from rival nations more pressing long-term concerns. Maintaining defense coverage required a unifying road system to slash military response delays. Raymond summoned Izmia and Sama as requested, handing them noble labor distribution duties. Surprised by Almas's meteoric rise, Izmia and Sama listened closely as he outlined the upcoming task. Almas entrusted Izmia and Sama to draft plans, demanding strict architectural competition. Leveraging Sumai's terrain expertise, Izmia enthusiastically accepted the challenge to give her best. Inspecting the flood map, Almas insisted on prioritizing proper water facilities above all else. Izmia noted the need for specialists, but Almas reassured her of voodoo expertise through his wives. Ainz arrived with extra experts, anticipating the kingdom's personnel shortages to Almas's astonishment. Nikolaus, a renowned Kirishia scholar, introduced himself as a master of multiple sciences. Izmia recognized him instantly, reeling from wild rumors surrounding his bizarre reputation back in Ulti. Nikolaus claimed the Earth revolves around the sun, leaving everyone thoroughly baffled and intrigued. Solid logic aside, many rejected the theory because its math clashed with traditional cosmic models. Nikolaus defended his theory against accusations of flawed assumptions, and Almas traced the gossip source. Skeptics questioned his waterworks skills, yet Nikolaus accepted the grueling task without a trace of pride. Nikolaus leveraged his vast knowledge of Altos rivers to secure an official appointment under Ainz. Almas privately accepted the theory. All technical specialists immediately began preparations. Izmia presented the finalized building site blueprints directly to Almas for urgent review. Geological input from Nikolaus successfully refined the detailed river and terrain analysis. Planners adjusted the layout along the western slope based on final survey results. Strategists selected a site east of three rivers, planning strong embankments against floods. Engineers proposed redirecting excess water into reservoirs to boost irrigation and prevent droughts. City construction begins after 1 year, but embankments require 5 years. Izmia proposed deploying 2,000 laborers to ensure efficient execution of the project. Almas demanded durable roads capable of handling military transport during heavy downpours. Strategic roadways linking royal palaces with neighboring nations would support trade and defense. Brick-paved roads inspired by advanced Lazado architecture became the primary capital design for Almas. Almas studied a layered road diagram, surprised that sophisticated Kirishia designs existed. Izmia believed Rojek could easily replicate the technology since it lacked complex mechanics. Wide pathways featuring dedicated pavements and drainage canals prevented potential traffic bottlenecks. Almas requested an extra 1,000 workers to manage the heavy land ownership workload. Borough officials gathered sensitive data concerning nobility properties surrounding the building zone. Almas felt completely confident during the survey phase, thanks to Tetra providing magical site assistance. Tetra utilized enchanted blueprints to survey with astonishing speed, leaving local workers stunned. Simple geometric guidelines allowed even non-magic users to operate the magical survey symbols easily. Though math skills were needed, Tetra confirmed researchers like Nikolaus could master writing magic easily. An abacus looked like magic, proving Almas spread knowledge that united both engineering and sorcery. Tetra corrected Nikolaus because mathematics transforms meaning into structured magical symbols. Inside Rojasi Palace, Almas received survey updates revealing hidden challenges beneath a promising facade. Skilled workers abounded, yet he spotted a dangerous gap in mid-level leadership, needing urgent restructuring. He weighed holding exams to select capable leaders. Simultaneously, he dodged political friction from noble appointments. Unannounced, Yuria and Tetra arrived to report on physics, voodoo, and Nikolaus making strides in training. The queens praised Thomas for his intellect before approaching him with a weighty and serious proposal. As voodoo practitioners, they raised alarms over unregulated magic harming commoners and spreading wild. They warned Almas that imposters were twisting voodoo to fool civilians and inflict massive public harm. To safeguard public trust, they proposed wiping out fakes and enforcing strict laws for practitioners. Recognizing the threat, Almas backed their strategy and pledged to tighten oversight over voodoo together. Almas visited the retired king to debate voodoo regulations and plans for relocating the royal capital. The former king endorsed Almas, promising he would never interfere with the running of the new government. Amos voiced anxiety over the kingdom's path, noting Yuria deliberately spared her father from the burden. Curious, the old king urged Almas to lay out Yuria's proposed legislation regarding voodoo practitioners. Almas detailed strict permits, harsh penalties, and kingdom control over ingredients for medicinal herbs. Founders won cash rewards to guard secrets. Meanwhile, rare exceptions protected sensitive voodoo knowledge. The kingdom launched a 3-tier permit system of gold, silver, and copper to classify voodoo users. Top-tier voodoo users entered royal ranks, earning salaries and research posts under mandatory state duty. Recognizing voodoo's military value, the kingdom agreed to fund research with conditional direction. State-funded voodoo schools were planned to cultivate talent through yearly skill assessments. Almas proposed a new magic research facility, acknowledging Tetra as the world's only mage. Tetra's curriculum introduced early math to spot potential magic users directly from school. Almas confirmed laws covered noble lands, offering rewards for reporting fake voodoo users. The new legislation mandated cooperation, enabling the kingdom to track foreign voodoo users. Mutual promises between Almas and the former king drove efforts to unify information and governance. Almas concluded a tense noble council meeting after successfully legalizing the new national laws. Domestic matters settled, yet Almas admitted the industrial sector desperately needed reform. He listed paper, salt, olive, wine, and new garnet resources sourced from De Morgar. Centralized information control and thin manpower blocked expansion into advanced industries. Small-scale commoner industries offered a way to boost cash flow and empower the kingdom. Almas emphasized that fresh industries were vital to quickly stimulate the monetary economy, and linen textile production formed his core proposal to satisfy clothing demands. Alliance constraints forced them to avoid sheep farming to protect Exus and its wool economy. Behind closed doors, Almas sought honest counsel before tackling a sensitive, far-reaching policy. Hemp presented a dangerous dual nature, serving as an exceptional textile, yet a potent narcotic. Rampant drug use threatened public order and undermined the fundamental security of the kingdom. Unchecked addiction promised total instability, and Almas warned it defied control once spread. Weighing the risks, Almas debated restricting hemp entirely or pushing linen to meet demands. Yuria proposes hemp for crop rotation due to its fast growth and agricultural value. Acknowledging drug issues in Kirushia, they suggest domestic cultivation to avoid unsafe imports. Faced with conflicting opinions, Almas chooses a neutral hemp policy, neither banning nor promoting it. Shifting from indecision to gratitude, Almas offers sweets as a brief escape from doubt. Imported honey delights everyone just as Almas prepares to visit Burroughs for his next duty. Yuria questions his schedule, and Almas admits foreign matters still demand his full attention. Despite exhaustion, Almas proposes a honeymoon during diplomatic travel to balance work and life, announcing his plan to visit Chrysia. Both queens eagerly volunteer to join Almas. 2 whole months of frantic preparation fly by before the royal journey finally kicks off, testing everyone's patience. Replacing normal envoys, Almas and the queens personally travel, surprising locals with their presence. Unruly soldiers force Rosewood to stay behind, but loyal companions pledge to serve as guards. Their journey finally starts, preparing everyone for for long roads and uncertain outcomes. To pass the time during travel, Almas introduces a new card game with numbered symbols. Rora excels using her math skills, whereas Tetra expresses dismay at the unexpected challenge. Playful debates break out, but news arrives that they have reached the border of Lizado. A scenic ocean greets the traveling party as they approach their long-awaited destination by caravan. Upon arrival, Lizardo's welcoming committee greets them warmly, eager to begin trade and diplomacy. A massive crowd fills the city streets, cheering loudly as Almas and his party arrive. Officials present Almas a grand mansion, second only to Parliament Hall for his diplomatic visit. Inside the mansion, the group finally rests as curiosity shifts towards seawater and salt usage. Seawater salt extraction leads into tomorrow's schedule featuring temple visits, library research, and personal exploration. Conversation drifts toward polytheism as Almas reassures everyone, and Ruru plans to return with copied texts. Almas proposes building a library in Rizashi, inspired by Alexandria, to preserve and share collective knowledge. Laughter accompanies their return to games until sunset signals the timely arrival of dinner preparations. Dinner hall grandeur impresses them with luxurious seafood dishes, boiled crabs, rice papilla, and fish meuniere. Introducing himself, the parliament leader expresses deep honor and checks their comfort with the seafood menu. Everyone agrees to relax and enjoy Lizardo's hospitality, fully ready to savor the region's freshest catch. Savoring the seafood, Yuria detects black pepper, prompting immediate admiration for the spice quality. The host explains their city gathers global spices, and Yuria declares she could eat this meal daily. Sudden silence falls as locals misinterpret Yuria's innocent praise as a political claim over Lizardo. Though unintentional, her remarks sound provocative, so Alma swiftly redirects the topic toward fish traits. Trade feasibility eases tensions as Lizardo confirms chilled delivery within 4 days, pleasing the group. Trade negotiations previously grew tense over heavy taxes, but Lizado's host offered dessert to ease discussions. Political tensions brew concerning King Rosati's peaceful trade versus Bervdale's aggressive expansion plans. Following a satisfying meal, Innis proudly shares Lizado's comforts to deepen diplomatic ties with Almas. News of nearby hot springs excites the group, prompting an eager collective suggestion to visit. A hall of towel-clad attendants surprises Almas, since they all volunteer to assist with his bathing. Almas declines, embarrassed yet composed, but his companions firmly assert their presence is all he needs. Almas suggests declining attendance, and Yuria agrees, proposing a quiet, hot spring visit among themselves instead. Arriving at the bathhouse, Almas marvels at the stunning open-air view overlooking the vast ocean. Inspecting the bath scale, the group plots equivalent facilities for Rosicchio's future capital. Yuria inspects a sponge-like object before Almas identifies its function for washing. Slippery soapberry bubbles engulf the laughing girls, startling a cautious Almas. Caution dictates Almas test the soapberry for safety before further hot spring use, reassuring a worried Almas. The girls judge the bubbles harmless by scent and placement. Startled screams launch the next morning, followed by a rushed and apologetic greeting from Lizado's host, proudly guiding Almas through Lizado's busy port. Their host details trade routes and key exports. Logistics discussions reveal that paper imports from Rosito now complement their salt trade. Lacking the sea, Rosito will receive shallow draft river transport ships purchased by Almas. 10 vessels are agreed upon, and Almas requests shipwrights to guarantee future repairs. Trade talks concluded, Almas asks for the library, prompting their guide to happily escort them inside. Sifting through scrolls, Almas realizes Lizado lacks any concept of intellectual property or copyright laws. Expressing her interests, Yuria prefers hands-on magic over studying books and abstract theories. Tetra locates several scrolls, excitedly pointing out volumes lining the massive archive shelves. Skipping the planned temple visit, Tetra decides to remain behind and continue studying. Knowing Tetra's passion for knowledge, Almas permits her to stay behind with Griffin. Almas meets Griffin at the temple to inquire further about the mysterious soapberry. Identifying the soapberry as sarpo fruit, Almas orders regular shipments for home hygiene. Enos explains how Aldinian kings flaunt Karushian goods as political status symbols. Almas discovers the local temple worships mercantile gods, where donations buy sharing rights. Though entirely devoid of magic, the golden statue stands as a sacred emblem of wealth and commerce. Ketra catches up to the party with arms piled high with scrolls gifted by impressed librarians. Twilight falls, prompting Yuria to happily declare that the entire outing felt just like a honeymoon. Deeply moved by the enriching journey, the girls express genuine gratitude to Almas before parting ways. Almas breathes a quiet sigh of relief and proposes heading back to unwind together at the hot spring.